Chapter 300. Outside Lanyan City, 30,000 Imperial Guards led the charge to break out of the encirclement. Feng Jixing held his long blade and rode his horse to the front of the formation. The purple electric flame wolf martial soul was entrenched around him, as though there was no one around. Lin Muyu led Wei Qiu, Xiahou Sang, and the rest of the Eagle Nest Camp's armored soldiers and followed the Imperial Guards to kill their way through. After breaking through 7 to 8 obstructing shield formations, the front was actually empty. The Iha country's army moved to the sides like a tide, as though they were afraid, but it was more like they were deliberately avoiding the enemy. What's going on? Feng Jixing held his bloody long saber and said through gritted teeth, Long Qianlin wants to let the Imperial Guards break out of the encirclement on purpose? Lin Muyu lowered her sword, grabbed Judy's reins, and galloped all the way. She said with a serious expression, Big Brother Feng, something is wrong. We can't break out of the encirclement so easily. The Iha nation's army isn't that weak. There must be a trap. Feng Jixing nodded, I know, but we still have to go to Heaven's Causeway Mountain. You must be careful. Lin Muyu frowned, Heaven's Causeway Mountain is most likely a trap. You must be extra careful. The Iha nation's people are hypocritical and cunning. If it's not absolutely necessary, don't go to Heaven's Causeway Mountain. Feng Jixing nodded and said with a smile, You must also be careful. Long Qianlin must have already noticed Dragon Rocky Mountain, and it's most likely surrounded now. I know. Let's part ways here. Okay. Lin Muyu suddenly pulled the reins, and Zhu Di let out a long neigh. He took his master to the northeast, while Wei Qiu, Xiahou Sang, and the other soldiers of the Eagle Nest camp followed. Feng Jixing shouted, and led the 30,000 Imperial Guards eastward towards Heaven's Causeway Mountain. The Eagle's Nest camp was made up entirely of cavalry. They moved at lightning speed. After 4 hours, they could already see Dragon Rocky Mountain in the distance. Just as Feng Jixing had expected, the flags of the Iha nation were flying at the foot of Dragon Rocky Mountain. This place was surrounded. However, there were not many soldiers surrounding the mountain, no more than 20,000 at most. With the remaining 15,000 soldiers in the Longdan army camp, it would definitely not be a problem for them to rush out. A messenger bird. Lin Muyu turned around and said. Wei Qiu immediately took the cage from the side of the horse and handed the messenger bird to Lin Muyu. Lin Muyu quickly wrote a line of words, Luo Yu, I have led the Eagle Nest camp to the west of Dragon Rocky Mountain to provide support. You will lead all the troops of the Longdan army camp down the mountain and follow me back to the imperial capital. Lin Muyu, whoosh! The bird flapped its wings and flew high into the sky. Like a sharp white arrow, it shot towards the towering Dragon Rocky Mountain. Not long after, the sound of drums on the mountain did not stop. Countless flags of the Longdan army camp could be faintly seen flying in the air. There were also some families' purple flower flags among them. It seemed that Luo Yu had already regarded the Longdan army camp as one of the many armies of the empire. They are charging down the mountain, Xiahou Sang said with a slightly excited smile. Lin Muyu nodded. Let's go, we will charge in from the periphery. We will coordinate from the inside and the outside to welcome the Longdan army camp down the mountain. After returning the dragon spirit sword to its sheath, Lin Muyu directly held the pear blossom spear and charged forward. Under the tactics of cavalry, the spear was naturally more lethal. As the saying went, an inch longer was an inch stronger. Moreover, the pear blossom spear was cold and sharp. It was very suitable for charging on horseback. Immediately, the hundreds of people from the Eagle Nest camp, led by Lin Muyu, charged into the Iha nation's camp from the back like tigers entering a flock of sheep. Xiahou Sang's broadsword directly chopped off the head of a volunteer soldier. He swept his gaze around and shouted, Commander, the ones surrounding the mountain are the troops of Swift White Province's Sunset City. Count Xiang Manning is already an old thing, yet he still dares to come to the northern ridge to mess with us. He is simply an old bastard. Kill them all. Count Xiang Manning? Lin Muyu frowned. At the same time, she also realized that the volunteer soldiers in front of her were indeed on the weak side. The soldiers seemed to have been out of battle formation for a long time. Faced with the Imperial Guards and Royal Army's attacks, they did not even have the slightest bit of strength to fight back. Just like that, she and her people killed their way into the depths of the camp. After Wei Chou shot the vanguard general with one arrow, the more than 10,000 volunteer soldiers lost their leader and completely became a target for slaughter. On the mountain, the Longdan army camp roared down. Luo Yu and Fengxi rushed at the front of the crowd. How could the Sunset City army possibly withstand the elite heavy cavalry? In the blink of an eye, they tore through the encirclement. The powerful battle formation of the Longdan army camp directly caused the Iha nation's army to be frightened out of their wits. Their flags fluttered, and they collapsed without a fight. Seeing the Iha nation's army retreat like the tide, Luo Yu continued to ride forward. She found Lin Muyu in the crowd, cupped her fists, and said, "Madam, should we chase after them?" "No need." Lin Muyu shook her head. "This volunteer army is not worthy of being our opponent. Follow me back to Lanyan City immediately." "We are needed there." "Yes." Turning their horses around, the 15,000 elites of the Longdan army camp led by Lin Muyu and Luo Yu charged straight for Lanyan City. The sound of hooves was earth-shattering. It was as if this army had become Lanyan City's only hope. However, Lin Muyu did not know that Lanyan City had already reached a point of no return. Boom! The city wall collapsed by another 20 meters. Zhang Wei, who was standing on the city wall, was dumbfounded. He watched as more than a dozen Imperial Guards fell into the rubble and were smashed into a pile of minced meat. The long saber in his hand was still trembling, and his face was ashen. He said, "Repair the city wall immediately. Archers, shoot. Don't stop. The moment we stop, the Iha nation barbarians outside will kill their way in. Guard the city gate and organize the shield formation below the city wall." A chilly arch of the Imperial Guards looked at Zhang Wei with a pale face and said, "General Zhang, the Imperial Guards have suffered heavy losses. We don't have more people to organize the shield formation to protect the city gate." "I don't care." Zhang Wei roared angrily. "Even if I have to find all the prostitutes in Lanyan City, you have to organize a shield formation of 100 people to protect the city gate. Go. Someone, send a message to Zetian Palace and ask General Qin Lei to send the Imperial Guards to reinforce the North Gate. The barbarians outside the North Gate are attacking like crazy." "Heavens." "Yes, General." Tongtian Street was bustling with people. They knew their fate on the day the city was breached. So many of them had already prepared their carriages. They were prepared to rush out and escape once the city gate was breached. They could not wait for death in the city. This made it even more difficult for the troops guarding the city to advance. In the distance, golden-purple Yinhua flags could be seen waving in the crowd. "Get out of the way!" An angry roar exploded in the crowd like a muffled thunder. It was Qin Lei, the commander of the Royal Guards. He was dressed in golden armor and carried the thunder-split blade. He personally led the Dragon Guards and Tiger Guards to kill their way over. In the crowd was a young girl wearing a king's crown. It was Qin Yin. Qin Yin had also personally come to defend the city. Zhang Wei hurriedly flew down the city wall and bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, you really shouldn't have come to the city gate. It's too dangerous here. The southern barbarians of Iha Nation are attacking like crazy. We can't defend the North Gate for much longer." "No, we must defend it." Qin Yin raised her hand and pulled out the purple Yinhua sword. She shouted, "As long as the city lives, we live. If the city dies, we die." The soldiers' morale was immediately boosted by the princess's arrival. Many people even rushed up the city wall and shouted, "Who can give me a sword? I also want to fight for the empire." Behind Qin Yin, a group of generals and civil officials shouted, "Your Highness, be careful. You are the only bloodline of the empire. You can't come to such a dangerous place. Hurry and return to Zetian Palace with us." Qin Yin did not care so much. With a few leaps, she landed on the city wall. In the distance, a scaling ladder was rapidly approaching the city wall. The volunteer soldiers on the scaling ladder aimed at Qin Yin, the general who was wearing the clothes of the empire's royal family. They raised their hands and shot a round of arrows. Qin Yin held the purple Yinhua sword horizontally in front of her chest. She lightly shook it. Suddenly, the purple Yinhua sword let out a sharp sword cry. It turned into a sound wave and attacked. 3 volunteer soldiers fell from the ladder. Qin Yin stomped on the bricks of the city wall with her small boots. 6 golden god-binding chains protected her body. She jumped on the ladder and the sword light flashed continuously. 4 volunteer soldiers fell to the ground and died. Whoosh! When she jumped back to the city wall, a few arrows behind her pierced into the wall. Qin Yin couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. This was war, not a game. She could die at any time. At the foot of the city, a group of volunteer soldiers had already recognized this beautiful girl. Their faces were filled with hatred as they shouted, "She's Qin Yin, it's her? This ugly woman has oppressed the world and preys on the people. She's our enemy. Shoot her quickly." Whoosh whoosh whoosh, countless arrows flew over. Jiang Wei hurriedly raised his hand and snatched a shield in front of Qin Yin. The arrows landed on the wooden shield with a pa-pa-pa sound. Suddenly he felt his body heat up. With a wang sound, a huge fire cauldron appeared on the city wall. It was Choo-Choo. Fire cauldron Choo-Choo spun around on top of the city wall and lightly raised his palm. Boom! A huge palm print landed on the battlefield outside the city, instantly killing a dozen volunteer soldiers and turning them into a pile of ashes. Choo-Choo turned to Qin Yin and said, "Your Highness, your life is related to the survival of the world. Please follow me back to Zetian Palace." Qin Yin gasped for breath and nodded, "Yes, Choo-Choo." At this moment, a heavy cavalry of the imperial army galloped over from afar. With a pale face, he shouted, "Not good, not good. The east gate has been breached." "What happened?" Jiang Wei said angrily, "The east gate is so sturdy, how could it be broken?" The imperial guard's face was ashen as he said, "A god. A god has descended." With just one palm, he shattered the entire east gate. "Oh my god, a god." Jiang Wei felt a chill in his heart. Choo-Choo's face also turned pale and said, "Qin Lei, protect Her Highness. Go around the main road through the alley and prepare to break through the east gate. As long as Her Highness is alive, the Empire still has hope." Qin Lei cupped his fists and said, "Yes, Sir Choo-Choo." Choo-Choo looked at the generals in the crowd and said, "Commander Chu Huaying, lead the Flying Mount Battalion out of the city to face Long Qianlin's main force. Only by delaying his main force outside the North Gate can Her Highness have a chance of breaking through." Chu Huaying cupped his fists and looked at Choo-Choo. His eyes were filled with determination. "Even if we die in battle, we will definitely delay Long Qianlin." Choo-Choo gave him a deep look. He felt a little bitter in his heart. After a few seconds, he said, "You are the pride of the Empire." Chapter 301. Boom! Another section of the city wall collapsed, and the volunteer soldiers swarmed in. Not to mention the east gate, even the north gate in front of them was in danger. Choo-Choo and Qin Lei protected Qin Yin together as they retreated from Zetian Palace Hall. The defeat of Lanyan City was inevitable. The Qin Empire had been around for more than 7,000 years. Finally, on this day, the fate of this ancient empire had come to an end. The war drums thundered, and the imperial guards, whose faces were covered with blood, carried the war drums to the city wall. They beat the war drums with all their might and cheered for the Flying Mount Battalion, which was streaming out of the city. Chu Huayin's armor was stained with blood, and his face looked tired. At this moment, the light of dawn fell on his face, making him look exceptionally handsome. With his hand on the hilt of his sword, Chu Huayin walked at the front of the Flying Mount Battalion. With an arrogant look on his face, he looked at the volunteer soldiers who were in formation outside the north gate of Lanyan City from afar. This volunteer soldier used to be the private army of Qin Yi, the Prince of Jianghu. It was an elite army from Bailing City, one of the 7 famous cities of the empire. At this moment, there were only 150,000 soldiers left. It was precisely because of the existence of this army that led to the defeat of Lanyan City. The Flying Mount Battalion was one of the only remaining corps of the empire. At this moment, there were more than 5,000 soldiers left, and the former commander of the Flying Mount Battalion was Long Qianlin. At this moment, Long Qianlin had become the commander of this volunteer soldier in front of them. History repeated itself again and again, just like a reincarnation. Long Qianlin knew the art of battle formations very well, so he only sent 1/3 of the troops. 50,000 soldiers lined up on the plain, and all of them were armed with spears and shields. They formed 7 circular battle formations, surrounding and protecting each other. Their spears pierced through the gaps between the shields. This was a battle tactic specially created to deal with cavalry. Among the crowd, Long Qianlin spurred his horse forward. With a slightly proud expression on his face, he cupped his fists and said, "Commander Chu Huayin, you are one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan, and also Lin Muyu's brother. Qianlin pays his respects to you. If Commander Chu is willing to surrender, with your ability, Prince Shinan will at least give you the title of Earl or Marquis. Why do you need to risk your life for the decadent and heartless empire?" Chu Huairan slowly unsheathed his sharp sword and said calmly, "I have to bear the burdens of the ruler. His Majesty Qin Jin has bestowed me with great honor. Today I, Chu Huairan, will use my life to protect his daughter, as well as the 5 million citizens of Lanyan City behind me." Long Qianlin sneered, "Bring it on then." Chu Huayin turned his horse around and looked at the Flying Mount Battalion behind him. He said loudly, "I know that all of you used to be in the army of 5 Valleys City and also Long Qianlin's army. But today, all of you are soldiers of the empire. It is a soldier's duty to protect the country. For the sake of the 5 million people of Lanyan City behind you, charge forward with me. Even if our corpses are buried in the ground, the soil under our feet will remember us. The mountains and rivers will remember us." The cavalrymen of the Flying Mount Battalion raised their weapons. Their faces were filled with hatred and anger. The sound of hooves gradually became more intense. The 5,000 cavalrymen were like a sharp blade that collided with the shield formation. In an instant, blood and flesh were all over the place. The first rays of the morning sun shone on Chu Huairan's face, but the cloak behind him fluttered. It was as if he was flying higher and higher, just like his dream. Yao, the moment Chu Huairan's sword tore apart the neck of a volunteer soldier, he laughed. "I'm not a competent brother, but I'm a competent soldier of the empire. Be proud of your brother." Outside the main battlefield, groups of volunteer soldiers had already killed their way into the city from the east and north gates. According to Marshal Ji Yao's order, massacre the entire city. These volunteer soldiers killed anyone they saw after entering the city. They were like ferocious beasts that devoured the lives in Lanyan City. At this moment, among the fleeing commoners, a young lady carrying a harp and her maid could be seen. There were also a few guards wearing the uniform of the Divine Might Battalion. They were moving against the flow of the crowd and heading straight for the north city wall. Zhang Wei was holding a long saber and riding his horse as he commanded the imperial guards to retreat. His gaze swept across the crowd and he hurriedly flew over. He said respectfully, "Miss Zhenxiang, the city gate has been breached. Why are you still here? Leave quickly and follow the commoners out of the city. That's our only hope." Zhenxiang was carrying a harp, but she shook her head with a smile and said, "General Zhang Wei, you should leave quickly. I want to finish the last part of my journey with him on this ruined city wall." Zhang Wei's body trembled. His eyes were red as he cupped his fists and said, "The empire has let you down and also let him down." Zhenxiang smiled. "Thank you for your understanding, General. Go quickly and save more people." "Yes." Zhang Wei spurred his horse away while Zhenxiang carried the harp and walked on the blood-stained stone steps. Step by step, she arrived at the ruined city wall. She slowly put down the harp on the broken wall where the battlements had fallen. She knelt on the blood-stained city wall and looked at the Flying Mount camp and the volunteer soldiers who were fighting in the distance. She knew that her beloved was dutifully doing his duty among the crowd. "Xiaoyu, burn the Qilin incense for me. Then you should escape too," Zhenxiang muttered. The maid was startled. Tears flowed from her eyes as she said, Miss, Xiaoyu won't leave. Xiaoyu wants to die with you. Jinxiang turned around and looked at her. Her face was filled with gentleness as she said, "You're still young. You haven't met anyone worthy of your love. Your life is still very long. As for me, the person I love is right there. My love will vanish along with him. Once Chu Huai dies, what's the point of Jinxiang living on?" Xiaoyu cried like a pear blossom in the rain, Miss, burn the incense and leave. Be obedient." "Yes, miss." Xiaoyu lit an incense burner. The purple incense was very strange. Wisps of it lingered around Jinxiang's body. Xiaoyu cried even more fiercely, "Miss." Jinxiang gently pulled on the strings of the zither and arranged them one by one. She lowered her head as her tears dripped onto the zither. She held back her sobs as she said, "We live together, and we die together. Jinxiang was born with love, so I have no regrets even if I die." Xiaoyu cried as she retreated a few steps. She said, "If there's a next life, I hope that Miss can stay with Commander Chu for the rest of your life. You don't have to suffer the pain of being separated by heaven and earth anymore. Xiaoyu is leaving now." As she spoke, Xiaoyu leaped up and landed silently under the rubble of the city like the morning sun. The guards looked at each other before cupping their fists and retreating. Jinxiang held back her tears as she looked at the crowd that was fighting below the city wall. She heard Chu Huai's voice and saw the resplendent lights of the star-plucking finger exploding in the crowd. No matter how sharp a sword was, it would not be able to sever the heart of love. The sound of the zither was filled with desolation. This was the first time Jinxiang had played the general zither. The sound of the zither was decisive, and it faintly carried the sound of a powerful army. It seemed to resonate with the battle below the city wall. On the battlefield, Chu Huaiyin's body was riddled with wounds. Even the warhorse he was riding on was riddled with arrows. But as the warhorse galloped, Chu Huaiyin raised his sword again and again, slashing at the bodies of the righteous soldiers. This was like fate. The battle between Chu Huaiyin and Long Qianlin was fate. His love for Jinxiang was also fate. The melody on her fingertips trembled continuously. Jinxiang looked at the person she deeply loved from afar, and her face became increasingly pale. Blood flowed out from her nostrils and the corner of her mouth. The sound of the zither also seemed to weaken due to the passing of life. She forcefully opened her eyes, wanting to take one more look at Chu Huai, but her vision became increasingly blurry. Chu Huai roared angrily in the crowd. It sounded like the mournful cry of a dying beast. There weren't many soldiers from the Flying Mount Battalion around him anymore. The Flying Mount Battalion had already become history, just like Chu Huai. Bang! The glow of battle energy surged as Chu Huai's star-plucking finger exploded once again, turning a group of righteous soldiers into a pile of flesh and blood. However, at the same time, a sharp arrow pierced into his chest. Chu Huai howled in pain as he gripped the reins tightly. However, the warhorse that was riddled with wounds had also reached the end of its life, and it slowly knelt down. Chu Huai struggled to pick up his long sword. He looked towards the city wall and saw a familiar figure slowly lying on the zither. Blood flowed down his forehead and into his eyes. This brave and invincible commander of the empire howled in pain as his tears mixed with the blood. He wanted to look again, but he could no longer see anything. He could only swing his sword and slash at the crowd. Spears pierced Chu Huai's body one after another, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. He waved his long sword crazily, causing heads to fly off. The group of righteous soldiers were so shocked that they retreated one after another. No one dared to move forward anymore. This commander, who was famous for his talent and was one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan, was like a mad beast. The righteous soldiers formed a circle around Chu Huai, but no one dared to attack him. Chu Huai's body was pressed against the spears as he knelt there. His tears and blood continuously splashed onto the yellow soil. Suddenly, he reached into his clothes and used the last of his strength to take out a blood-stained ball. He said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "Yao, brother is gone." Outside the battle formation, Long Qianlin was riding on a warhorse. His body trembled slightly as he bowed his head in the direction of Chu Huaiyin and said, No one is allowed to touch Chu Huayin's corpse. Do you understand? Yes, General. The group of generals cupped their fists. At this moment, a messenger suddenly galloped over and said loudly, General, something bad has happened. Lin Muyu has led the Longdan army camp's men here. They will arrive at the battlefield in 5 minutes at most. He's finally here. Long Qianlin raised his hand slightly and said, block the north gate of Lanyan City with 20,000 men. Let Lin Muyu and the Longdan army camp enter with the remaining 100,000 men. Surround them. This is a battle of annihilation. A general asked, General, you want to kill Lin Muyu? Long Qianlin's eyes flickered as he said, if you kill someone's elder brother and they have the ability to kill you, will you spare their life? I understand. The group of volunteer soldiers slowly dispersed as the Longdan army camp entered. Lin Muyu rode on his warhorse and ignored the volunteer soldiers who were surrounding him. He headed straight for the center of the battlefield and saw countless corpses in the distance. The Empire's purple Yinhua flag was scattered all over the ground. There was a person kneeling at the spot where the most corpses were piled up. His blood-stained commander's cloak fluttered gently in the wind. That was Chu Huai. Lin Muyu felt as if his heart had been pierced by thousands of arrows. His body swayed and he fell to the ground. He scrambled to his feet and stumbled all the way to Chu Huai's corpse. He hugged his ice-cold body and almost couldn't cry. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he hugged Chu Huai's body tightly. He cried out sorrowfully, as if he was a wild beast that had lost its loved one. Chapter 302. Plop. The exquisite ball, which was covered in blood, fell to the ground. Lin Muyu looked at it, and his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. He gently picked up the exquisite ball and stuffed it into his clothes. He raised his hand and tore off his holy temple cloak, instantly tearing it into strips. He mounted his horse and tied Chu Huayin's corpse behind him. Tears flowed down his cheeks as he pulled out the pear-blossom spear that was stabbed into the side of his horse. He muttered, "Revenge!" Luo Yu, Wei Chou, and the others pulled out their weapons one after another. Their faces were filled with anger and hatred as they shouted, "Revenge! Revenge!" At this time, Long Qianlin had already finished setting up the battle formation. The Yihe nation's army was all around them. Long Qianlin had 150,000 elite soldiers, and 10,000 of them had been killed by Chu Huayin. There were still 140,000 of them left. His military strength was definitely above that of the Longdan army camp. However, Long Qianlin didn't dare to be careless, because the person commanding the Longdan army camp was Lin Muyu. She was the opponent he feared the most in his life. Cavalry, move out. The Yiyong army finally mobilized the Lingnan heavy cavalry. About 30,000 of them slowly moved out of the formation, facing off with the Flying Geese formation. They were ready to attack at any time. Luo Yu raised her spear high and shouted, "Regroup the front line, cone formation." Long Qianlin was too arrogant. He actually wanted to use the Flying Geese formation to take over the Longdan army camp. However, it wasn't going to be that easy. Everyone in the Longdan army camp was equipped with shields and armor. It wasn't going to be that easy to take them down. Charge! Lin Muyu acted as the sharp blade of the cone formation. She patted her horse and galloped forward. The sound of the horse's hooves could be heard behind her as she charged towards the opponent's Flying Geese formation. Just as the two sides were about to collide, the soldiers of the Brave Dragon Battalion took out their longbows and shot a round of arrows. Furthermore, they were using white diamond arrowheads. The white diamond was so sharp that it could penetrate a 10-centimeter thick steel plate. How could the Lingnan cavalry's armor withstand it? Puff, 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 puff. Blood splattered everywhere. One round of arrow rain was enough to injure or kill thousands of Lingnan cavalrymen. This kind of loss was nothing much, but the corpses of the cavalrymen quickly became obstacles for their comrades at the back. When they collided with each other, the losses were hard to calculate. What was worse was that the Courage Dragon Battalion was charging towards them. The group of people led by Lin Muyu suddenly thrust their spears forward. Amidst the violent collision, the two heavy cavalry clashed head-on. In an instant, it was clear who had the upper hand. Lin Muyu's expensive equipment showed her advantage. She killed the Lingnan cavalry with a single charge. After nearly 20 minutes of charging, both sides changed their positions and regrouped their formation. They were ready to attack again. However, the Lingnan cavalry had lost almost 5,000 men. On the other hand, the Longdan army camp had lost less than 1,000 men. Bastard! Long Qianlin clenched his fist and said coldly, "What kind of arrowhead is that? It can actually pierce through our steel shields." Lin Muyu is just too terrifying. A military officer cupped his fist and said, "General, do you want me to send someone to fetch an arrowhead for us to take a look?" "There's no need. Don't disturb the battlefield." He hesitated for a moment and said, But our heavy cavalry is clearly not a match for the Longdan army camp. If we continue to fight them head-on, I'm afraid we'll suffer a great loss." Long Qianlin raised his eyebrows and said, "If we can use 30,000 heavy cavalry to exchange for the 10,000 Longdan army camp, then this deal will be too profitable." Yes. However, everything was not as Long Qianlin had imagined. After fighting for more than 2 hours, only a few of Lingnan's 30,000 heavy cavalry were left. At most, there were only 2,000 injured soldiers left. However, there were still more than 8,000 people from the Longdan army camp standing proudly on the battlefield. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Luo Yu and the rest were already covered in blood. No one knew how many people they had killed. They only knew that their comrades were decreasing one by one. The pear blossom spear seemed to have been bathed in blood. Even the handle that was holding it was a little slippery. Lin Muyu lightly shook her arm. Immediately, the pear blossom spear buzzed loudly and shook off all the blood. Looking at the volunteer army camp in the distance, Lin Muyu slowly raised her arm and pointed the pear blossom spear at them. She smiled and said, "Follow me and attack their volunteer army camp." The Longdan army camp did not wait for the enemy to reorganize their formation and launch their attack. There was no place for modesty on the battlefield. Lin Muyu understood the principle of not missing an opportunity. She would not give Long Qianlin any time to catch his breath. "Oh no, they aren't even resting before charging," said a military officer with a pale face in the middle of the volunteer army. Long Qianlin immediately waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Order them to immediately reorganize the heaven and earth formation and block the Longdan army camp." A group of archers, pikemen, and shield-bearers formed a circular battle formation and attacked rapidly. It was this battle formation that defeated Chu Huayin's flying mount camp. Now, Long Qianlin was using the same tactic again. It seemed like he wanted Lin Muyu to end up like Chu Huayin. Not only that, he swept his gaze across the crowd and cupped his fists. "Lord Kobin, please come out and help us kill Lin Muyu." Among the crowd, a middle-aged general who seemed to be in his 50s rode out of the formation. His face was expressionless, but when he frowned, an invisible aura descended on the surroundings, causing Long Qianlin and the others to feel a boundless pressure. This was the domain of a Saint Realm expert. This Kobin was one of the Saint Realm experts that Luolan had brought down from the Sacred Peak. Currently, he was under Long Qianlin's command. As soon as Kobin came out of the battle formation, it seemed like all the Iha Nation soldiers were excited. Lin Muyu and the others naturally did not know about Kobin's existence. In the midst of a chaotic battle, how could Lin Muyu be distracted to use the spiritual pulse technique? The pear blossom spear in her hand was stained with blood again. Facing the heaven and earth formation, Lin Muyu decisively ordered the white diamond arrows to open up a path. After shooting the shield-bearers on the periphery, they charged straight in and used the heavy armor of the Longdan army camp to block the arrows. At the same time, they trampled with their iron hooves, instantly destroying the heaven and earth formation formed by 5,000 people. "Continue, follow me and charge forward." The army collided with the second heaven and earth formation. Lin Muyu took the lead, waved her iron fist, and directly punched out with chaos of the common people. With a bang, more than 10 shield-bearers were sent flying and turned into blood. Behind her, Wei Chou shot an arrow and killed captaincy in the formation. Then, the Longdan army camp charged straight in and was about to destroy the second heaven and earth formation. Long Qianlin narrowed his eyes and watched from afar. His palms were drenched in sweat as he said faintly, "Lin Muyu, I want to see how you're going to defend against a saint. If you die in battle, I'll collect your corpse. I won't let you suffer any humiliation. You're the same as Chu Huaying, a respectable soldier of the empire. You're the pride of this land." In the battle formation, a person suddenly broke through the wind. It was Ko Bin. Ko Bin held a long saber in his hand and attacked from the right side. The handle of the saber swept diagonally, and the power of the sanctuary surged. Immediately, the heads of 5 soldiers in the Longdan army camp flew into the air. Some of them even had their helmets cut off. After this attack, Ko Bin roared and punched forward with his iron fist. Suddenly, the space was slightly distorted. In the next moment, with a bang, more than 10 soldiers in the Longdan army camp were all swallowed by the flames. The flames in the battle formation soared into the sky. This was the cultivation of a sanctuary expert. "It's a sanctuary," Wei Chou shouted. "Men, come with me and kill them." "No, you stay." Lin Muyu looked at Wei Chou from afar and gestured for him to stop. She said, "Everyone, change your bows and arrows. Let's kill this sanctuary expert first. I'll distract him." With that, Lin Muyu turned over and dismounted from the horse. She used the falling star steps and moved faster than the horse. The pear blossom spear was already hanging on the horse's back, but she raised her hand and pulled out the dragon spirit sword. She attacked from behind Ko Bin. With a roar, the fire in her palm was dense, and she directly used a spiral break that was infused with the true dragon essential fire. At the same time, with a swoosh in the air, the invisible demonic noise saber also flew out. "Die!" In the crowd, Ko Bin brazenly punched the heart of a soldier in the Longdan army camp, but he also felt the strong flame energy behind him. He quickly turned around and saw Lin Muyu. He couldn't help but laugh. "Second heaven of the heaven realm? You'll still die." He spurred his horse forward, his eyes filled with killing intent. Suddenly, his aura rose, and the surrounding time seemed to freeze. Suddenly, everyone couldn't move, and an invisible aura controlled everything. "Ha!" Ko Bin laughed maniacally as he charged toward Lin Muyu. His fists were covered in scorching flames, and he blasted the dragon flame spiral break aside before unleashing another punch that struck the wall of her golden gourd. Bam! Lin Muyu was completely immobilized within the domain, and she threw up a mouthful of blood as she flew back a few steps. However, right at this moment, Wei Chou and the others, who were over 100 meters away, weren't within the domain. He raised his demon-devouring bow, and an arrow flew through the air before striking Ko Bin's suit of battle armor. The arrow penetrated about 3 centimeters into the suit of battle armor, and Ko Bin hurriedly stumbled back a few steps with an astonished expression on his face. How is this possible?" His aura was thrown into disarray, and his domain also disappeared. Lin Muyu spun around and landed firmly on the ground. Her battle boots shone with a golden light as she stomped on the ground. Swoosh, 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 golden gourd vines rose from the ground and bound Ko Bin tightly, not giving him any chance to break free from the gourd vines. Xiahou Sang, Luo Yu, and the rest all took out their bows and arrows and released them. In an instant, Ko Bin had turned into a porcupine. Crack! An invisible demonic noise saber flew through the air, slicing through Ko Bin's head as well as the gourd vines. A Saint Domain powerful being had just died in the midst of a chaotic battle, and that seemed to further reinforce the saying that 2 fists were no match for 4 hands, let alone the elite Longdan army camp. Ko Bin had underestimated his opponent far too much. After getting onto her steed, Lin Muyu's expression became even more resentful as she yelled, "Continue to charge." The morale of the Iha Nation soldiers was also shaken by Ko Bin's death. Long Qianlin was completely flabbergasted, and he couldn't help but mutter, "How is this possible?" "Great General, should we retreat our command camp?" one of the generals suggested. Long Qianlin gritted his teeth in response. "No, switch from defense to offense. Gather our forces and hold off the Longdan army camp." Chapter 303. Mount Heaven's Causeway was a solitary peak that towered between heaven and earth. When Feng Jixing arrived at Mount Heaven's Causeway with 30,000 imperial guards, there was no trace of the imperial flag. Instead, Mount Heaven's Causeway was surrounded by the Tianshu province army that had changed their flag. 80,000 Tianshu soldiers were camped at the foot of Mount Heaven's Causeway, and their leader was Yuqi Tian, the head of the Yuqi family. However, the Tianshu army was no longer wearing the insignia of the empire. Instead, they were wearing the insignia of the Iha nation. Yuqi Tian had committed treason. Tuck, tuck, tuck. It was the envoy of the Tianshu army. He held a white flag in his hand and had an arrogant look on his face. When he arrived in front of the imperial army, he laughed out loud and said, "I, Li Tong, the Heavenly Corps Army Adjunct, pay my respects to the commander of the imperial army, Lord Feng Jixing. You are an outstanding man, so you should understand the meaning of obeying the will of the heavens. The 80,000 soldiers of the Tianshu army have surrendered to the Iha nation. Together with the 50,000 reinforcements from Lingnan, there are 130,000 soldiers waiting for you, Lord Feng Jixing. His Highness, the Southern Guardian King, has said that as long as you are willing to surrender to the Iha nation, he will confer you the title of Northern Guardian King. What do you think, Lord?" Feng Jixing sat on his warhorse with a tired expression. He looked at Li Tong indifferently until he saw that Li Tong was a little ill at ease. "Lord, why are you looking at me like that?" Feng Jixing smiled. "I want to see what a dog's face looks like." Li Tong said angrily, "Feng Jixing, don't think that you're so great just because you're the commander of the Imperial Guards. Let me tell you, the empire is finished. From now on, it will be the Iha nation's world. You, Feng Jixing, are nothing more than a dog of the empire. Commander Yuqi Tian sent me here to negotiate with you because he thinks highly of you, Feng Jixing. Otherwise, my 130,000 soldiers would be able to destroy your mere 30,000. Then let him destroy us." Feng Jixing suddenly pulled out his saber and directly chopped off Li Tong's head. Blood splattered far away, but none of the surrounding imperial army generals dodged, allowing the blood to splatter on their bodies. "This way, no one will be able to report back to Yuqi Tian and have him destroy us," Luo Lai said indifferently. Feng Jixing smiled. "Don't worry. I'm sure that old dog Yuqi Tian will understand what I mean." "What now?" "His Majesty has been murdered." Feng Jixing murmured, "Let's retreat. Retreat towards the direction of the imperial capital. Retreat as we fight. But I don't know if I can bring you all back to the imperial capital alive." "We will follow the commander without any regrets even if we die," Luo Lai said with a smile. When Feng Jixing and the others turned around to retreat, the sound of war drums could be heard from behind them. The 80,000 soldiers from the Tianshu army had already caught up and were charging over from all directions. Meanwhile, another group of Iha nation's troops appeared in the forest on the side. It was the troops from Lingkong province. Feng Jixing's eyes turned cold as he said, "Don't continue fighting. Cavalry, switch to bows and long-range projectiles. Cover the infantry's retreat." Sounds of killing could be heard from all directions in the forest. In Lanyan City, dust was flying everywhere on the battlefield north of the city, but the battle was nearing its end. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the battlefield, illuminating the pools of blood. After a whole day of fighting, the Longdan army camp had not been able to charge out of here, but the Iha nation had paid an even heavier price. More than half of the 150,000 elite soldiers under Long Qianlin's command had been killed by the Flying Mount camp and the Longdan army camp in a single day. "Chief General." An old general looked at the unbearable scene on the battlefield and said with a trembling voice, "These Iha nation soldiers are the Lingnan warriors who were raised by His Highness, the Prince of Jianghu. Now, 90,000 of our 150,000 soldiers have died in battle. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to continue fighting. Otherwise, if His Highness investigates, I'm afraid that Chief General will not be able to absolve himself from the blame. No, we must kill everyone in the Longdan army camp." Long Qianlin looked at the battlefield with an ashen face and said, There are only slightly more than 1,000 soldiers left in the Longdan army camp. Only by killing them can it be considered a real victory. If we don't get rid of the Longdan army camp today, this troop will definitely be a huge problem for us in the future. The old general gritted his teeth and said, "Chief General, His Highness gave you the military power so that you can fight for the Iha nation. However, you seem to have placed the grudge between you and Lin Muyu in a more important position. If that's the case, I'm afraid I have to consider reporting to His Highness." Long Qianlin narrowed his eyes. The old general continued, "I've also heard that it was Lin Muyu who saved your wife, Hu Xiaoyan, when you were in Five Valley City. I don't know if that's true. Since you're indebted to Lin Muyu, why are you so ruthless, Chief General?" Long Qianlin laughed miserably and said, "Do you think that I don't want to let Lin Muyu go? However, do you know what kind of price we'll have to pay once Lin Muyu takes her revenge? I'm afraid it won't be as simple as tens of thousands of people. However, since you've said so, let's drop the matter for today. I don't want a hero like Lin Muyu to die on the battlefield. Men, sound the gongs to retreat and let Lin Muyu enter the city." "Yes, General." The gongs sounded and the Iha nation soldiers under Long Qianlin's command retreated like a receding tide, opening up a path to Lanyan City for the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu was panting heavily. The fighting energy and physical strength in her body were almost depleted. Even the strength to hold the dragon spirit sword was strained. Beside her, Icatosaurus's red crystal scales were covered in blood. The little fellow was very happy after being released to help in the battle. However, it was so tired that it followed beside Lin Muyu like a reptile. Looking at Lanyan City in the distance, it had already changed. "Xiao-yin," Lin Muyu murmured, but she didn't know if her beloved was still alive. Wei Chou, who was covered in blood, said calmly, "Commander, they're massacring the city." Yes, Lin Muyu could see everything clearly. At this moment, Lanyan City was almost filled with the Iha nation's troops. Under Marshal Ji Yao's Iron Order, the Iha nation's army of more than 200,000 soldiers were massacring the citizens of Lanyan City. There was no resistance, only death and fear. Boom! Another section of the city wall collapsed, and a body fell from the broken wall. A Guqin and a woman were lying among the rubble. Lin Muyu's gaze swept across, and his heart couldn't help but ache. It was Jinxiang. He urged his horse forward and carried Jinxiang's body. He untied Chu Huaying's body and handed them to the soldiers of the Longdan army camp behind him. "Luo Yu, lead the Longdan army camp around the city and look for Her Highness Yin and Chu Yao. Once you find them, bring them far away. Wei Chou, Xiahou sang, the two of you will bring the remaining imperial guards and follow me into the city. Also, bury Big Brother and Jinxiang together. Even if they can't be together in life, at least they can be together in death." "Yes, my lord." There were only slightly more than 1,000 people left in the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu really didn't want this army that he had raised with his own hands to die in the chaos. At least he wanted to leave a torch for the Longdan army camp and the empire. As night fell, the Longdan army camp disappeared into the night. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, and Xiahou Sang brought more than a dozen imperial guards into the city. They could only hope that Qin Yin could successfully escape. However, it was easier said than done. The Iha nation had sent countless soldiers and peerless masters to hunt down the empire's crown prince in the city. In the distance, there were howls on Tongtian Street. Countless commoners were banished to the streets. Then, they were killed by a group of brave soldiers carrying broadswords. The screams of young girls could be heard from the rubble on the side. The Iha nation had conquered Lanyan City, so it was inevitable that they would abduct the young women in the city. This seemed to be an unwritten rule. Is this what it means to be benevolent and to treat all living things equally? Wei Chou couldn't help but sneer. He didn't hide the grief and indignation on his face. Lin Muyu led the group into the alley and rushed all the way. They didn't dare to provoke the Iha nation's soldiers. If they killed one person, they would attract 10 or even 100 people. Then, there would be no need to talk about saving Qin Yin. Not far away, a pile of corpses was being burned. They were all commoners who had been slaughtered. The burnt smell permeated the entire Lanyan city. Judging from the light of the fire, more than 1/3 of the city had been burned and killed. Lanyan city was very large and could accommodate 5 million people. The Iha nation's massacre would probably continue for a long time. When the group took a detour to the vicinity of Zetian Palace, they saw from a distance that Zetian Palace had been heavily surrounded by the Iha nation's army. The dozen or so people under Lin Muyu's command were simply courting death. However, there were still many Iha nation's cavalrymen coming and going in Zetian Palace. They seemed to be searching for something. Xiao Yin probably hasn't been found yet. Lin Muyu secretly rejoiced and said, "We don't need to enter Zetian Palace. We'll set up an ambush in this alley. We'll knock a few people unconscious and interrogate them." The group of people tied up their war horses and hid in an empty house. The commoners had been captured and killed, so there would be no one left. They waited until midnight. Finally, a group of cavalrymen galloped over. Under the starlight, they could see that the person at the front was wearing a black cloak and armor. He was actually a high-ranking general with 3 stars on his collar. He was a commander-level person. Lin Muyu's eyes turned cold and she said, "Do it." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The golden gourd vines quickly rose and entangled all the people in the alley. Lin Muyu rushed down with her sword. With a wave of her long sword, she directly cut off the head of the commander at the front. It seemed that he was a civil general who did not know martial arts. The group of people following Lin Muyu were all imperial guards. Their cultivation levels were extremely high. They finished off the group of cavalrymen in 2 or 3 moves, leaving only one alive. This survivor looked at the corpse under Lin Muyu's sword and muttered, "It's over, it's over." "The commander is dead," Wei Qiu said coldly. "A mere commander, what does he count as?" The bodyguard was aghast and said, He is the Iha kingdom's general Lin Yu." "Lin Yu?" Lin Muyu was stunned. "The Lin Yu who used the tactic of crossing the mountains with a green raincoat?" "Good death." Lin Muyu swept her gaze across and said, "Leave no survivors. Change into their clothes and continue to look for Her Highness Yin." The sky gradually brightened. The holy temple was full of commoners who were seeking refuge. They hoped that the guards of the holy temple could save them and escape the massacre of the city. But how could they escape? Boom! Under the fierce palm wind, the bodies of the 2 Iha kingdom cavalrymen were torn apart. The holy temple's grand deacon, Lei Hong, stood guard outside the holy temple. He looked towards the east and said, "It's daybreak." But at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly descended from the sky. He hurriedly looked up and a trace of despair flashed in his eyes. Luo Lan. Chapter 304. Luo Lan, who was wearing a golden robe, stood in the air. She looked at Lei Hong with disdain. Divine power surrounded her. She smiled faintly and said, "You are Lei Hong, one of the 2 sacred regions of Lanyan City?" Lei Hong raised a shining iron spear. His eyes were filled with reverence. He said, "Luo Lan, the sacred temple is the temple of the continent's cultivators. Since ancient times, it has not been blasphemed. No matter how many soldiers pass by, no one is allowed to start a massacre in the sacred temple. Iha country massacred the entire city, but definitely not in my sacred temple." "No, I don't kill." Luo Lan's lips curled up. She said indifferently, "I'm only here to meet you, one of the 2 sacred regions of the empire." Lei Hong glanced at the bustling citizens of Lanyan City in the sacred temple. He also saw Guiyang, Qin Yan, and the others looking at him. He shouted, "Close the doors of the sacred temple. No matter what happens, don't come out." Qin Yan gritted his teeth. "Grand Deacon," Lei Hong said decisively, "close the doors." Guiyang pushed with his palm. Immediately, the doors of the sacred temple closed. Through the gap of the doors, Lei Hong, dressed in a white robe, raised his iron spear high up. The power of the spirit returning art quickly spun. Good. Luo Lan praised twice and laughed. "This is the first time I've met such an opponent since I came to the lower realm." But it's still not enough. I didn't expect that after Qin Yi ascended 200 years ago, The powerhouses in the lower realm would be so weak that a mere Saint Venerable can become the Saint Hall's Grand Deacon. As she spoke, Luo Lan suddenly thrust out with one hand. A blood-red blade came out of her body. First-class martial spirit, demon blood blade. In the next moment, the light of the demon blood blade fell down like a mountain. Bang! Dust rose. The spear in Lei Hong's hand was broken into two. A blood stain appeared on his shoulder. But he seemed to not feel the pain at all. He suddenly leaped and rushed towards Luo Lan. His left hand was behind his back. He quickly raised his right hand. The second-class martial spirit, Starlight Sword, came out of his body. The blade was surrounded by the golden divine power of the spirit returning art. It broke through the air. Good timing! Luo Lan chortled with glee as she gently swept an arm through the air, upon which a suit of battle armor quickly materialized. Bursts of divine power were injected into the suit of battle armor, and the suit of battle armor was able to forcibly repel Lei Hong's attack. However, Lei Hong's attacks were unending. The moment his martial spirit shattered, he raised his palm, and the soul-returning art transformed into a golden light that fell from the sky. It was like a golden bell that enveloped Luo Lan and the demon blood saber. With a one sound, the flames soared into the sky and burned fiercely. Luo Lan was dead? No, God would not be defeated so easily. In the next moment, with a chila sound, space distorted slightly, and a spatial crack suddenly appeared behind Lei Hong. Luo Lan's figure came out, and she said indifferently, "It ends here, Lei Hong, go to the afterlife." Buzz. The demon blood saber glowed brightly, forming a powerful divine realm domain that enveloped Reiham and Luo Lan. Arg. Lei Hong let loose a howl of anguish as blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. He abruptly fell to his knees, and he was completely unable to activate his Saint Realm domain. In the face of Luo Lan's power, he appeared to be extremely weak. Furthermore, the blood that was seeping out of the corners of his mouth transformed into beads of blood that flew toward the demon blood saber. The demon blood saber was a renowned, lethal weapon that devoured the blood essence of others in order to become more powerful. Golden red light swelled even further, and Luo Lan's expression was quite sinister as she chortled with glee. "Accept your fate, the history of our empire is over." Lei Hong's body began to twist and contort, but he gritted his teeth and endured the immense pain without uttering a single sound. A series of bloody grooves appeared on his skin and face, and his energy and blood were being sucked dry by the demon blood saber. However, he was unwilling to give up his entire cultivation base to the demon blood saber. Reiham roared into the sky. The underworld azure stone ring on his thumb buzzed out of the black tortoise shield. However, it instantly shattered under the pressure of the demonic blood saber. Reiham's muscles and chi and blood swelled up as he roared, "Take revenge for me!" Golden light exploded, and the entire plaza in front of the temple turned into a huge pit. Lei Hong's body had already disappeared. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. A dignified grand deacon of the temple had actually died without a complete corpse. Ding! The azure netherstone ring was very sturdy, and it actually fell into the rubble in the huge pit unscathed. "Umph!" Luo Lan snorted coldly, and suddenly slapped out with his palm. Amidst the rumbling sound, the metal doors of the temple turned into dust and fell down. He looked at Guiyang, Qin Yen, and the group of commoners in the temple, and said indifferently, "I, Luo Lan, have already become a god, and am not willing to harm the common people, so I won't kill you. However, you must tell me, there is still a holy region. Where is that Chu-Chu?" Qin Yen raised the fire serpent spear and walked forward step by step, the dragon scale armor covering his body. His eyes were filled with anger as he said, "Don't think that you can humiliate the lives of others just because you are a god. You want to kill Chu-Chu? Dream on." "Ha!" Luo Lan looked deeply at Qin Yen and said, "You are not worthy for me to make a move." "Bullshit!" Qin Yen roared angrily, raising his spear and rushing towards the sky. He landed diagonally, and the spear pierced downwards like lightning. However, Luo Lan did not do anything at all. The protective astral wall on the surface of his body forcefully sent Qin Yan flying. A stream of fresh blood spurted out in the air. Qin Yan's arms were already injured. Falling to the ground in a sorry state, Gu Yang hurriedly helped Qin Yan up, his gaze hinting for him to stop attacking. And the group of instructors and sparring masters in the temple were nearly scared out of their wits. It could be seen how strong this god, in front of them, was. The strongest instructor of the temple could not even touch him, and he was already heavily injured. If it were someone else, they would probably have been smashed into pieces long ago. Gu Yang looked at Luo Lan, shook his head, and said indifferently, "The massacre of the Iha kingdom. Everyone's whereabouts are unknown. As for where Chu Chu is, we don't know either." Luo Lan snorted coldly, turned around, and flew out. Gu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Don't hesitate anymore. Escort the citizens out of the city. The more that can escape, the better. Lord Qin Yan, can you still move?" Qin Yan held onto his spear, wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth, and said, "I'm fine. Let's go." "I wonder how Big Brother and Big Brother Lin Muyu are doing." An instructor cupped his fists and said, "I heard that the Flying Mount camp was completely annihilated, and Lord Chu Huayin has already died for the country." Qin Yan was startled, and his eyes could not conceal the vexation and unwillingness, and said, "As soldiers of the Empire, we are hiding here. We can't be like Lord Chu Huayin. His blood has already dyed the yellow sand. This is simply a type of humiliation." Gu Yang said, "To be able to escort these thousands of citizens out of the city is a merit of our temple. Quick, don't hesitate, get everyone out. Hiding in the temple will never escape this massacre." "Yes." Under the ruins, Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, and the others were wearing the uniforms of the Iha nation soldiers, and they slowly rode their horses under the southern city wall of Lanyan City. They did not dare to shout loudly, and could only search for Qin Yan's figure among the passing citizens. At the city gate, a group of Iha nation soldiers armed with swords and sabers were guarding there, blocking the citizens' path of retreat. Any citizen who wanted to pass through this place had already been killed, and the corpses were piled up like a mountain. Some were burned on the spot, some were dragged further away to be buried, and even more were left exposed in the wilderness. After seeing Lin Muyu's military rank, a patrolling officer immediately cupped his fists respectfully and said, "May I know where Lord is going?" Lin Muyu glanced at him and said, "Remnant of the Empire, where is Qin Yin?" The patrolling officer smiled and said, "So Lord is also here for the 1 million Qin Yin coins? 1 million Qin Yin coins?" "Yes, Marshal Ji Yao offered a reward this morning. Anyone who captures Qin Yin will be rewarded with 1 million Qin Yin coins. However, it's not easy to capture Qin Yin. The Imperial Army is not completely wiped out yet, and it's said that Qin Lei has brought thousands of men to protect Qin Yin and leave the city through the broken wall. However, he can't have gone far, and General Lu Zhao has already led 20,000 cavalry to chase after him. Where are the Imperial Guards?" "The southern suburbs." "Got it. Move aside, we're going out of the city to chase after him." "All right, let them through." Outside the city, there were piles of corpses everywhere. This massacre had become a feast for the Iha nation of Lingnan. Lin Muyu traveled quickly in silence, while Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, and the others had ashen faces and bloodshot eyes. As Imperial Guards, they could not protect the citizens of the Empire. Wasn't this a kind of mockery? "Command." Wei Chou's ears perked up, and after listening attentively he said, "There are sounds of fighting in the southeast." Lin Muyu's spirit pulse technique had also sensed many auras ripples, and she said, "Go quickly, we might be able to make it in time." The horses galloped through the blood-stained soil, and when Lin Muyu and the others rushed out of the forest, they saw a group of people fighting in the distance. However, the battle was nearing its end, and there were corpses of Imperial Guards and Iha soldiers everywhere. In the open space in the forest, there were hundreds of Iha nation archers holding bows and arrows, continuously shooting at the people in the inner circle. "All right." A mid-ranked officer raised his hand and said, "The Imperial Guards of the Qin Empire are all dead, so let's not waste time here. Let's go and chase after Qin Yin. We must eliminate her. After the hundreds of Iha soldiers left on their horses, Lin Muyu and the others rushed to the battlefield, only to discover that there were many corpses of imperial guards around them. At the center, there was a person kneeling there, his entire body pierced with arrows, and the white cloak embroidered with a golden purple flower was already dyed red with blood. White-robed imperial guards, it was Qin Lei. Lin Muyu's heart felt as if it had been clawed into pieces. She flipped off her horse and staggered, almost losing her footing. She walked shakily to Qin Lei's side, wanting to hug him, but she realized that there wasn't even a place for her to put her hands on. Qin Lei was kneeling there, his entire body pierced with arrows, and his neck had also been pierced by 7 to 8 arrows, causing blood to flow. Big brother Qin Lei. Lin Muyu's voice trembled, and she was almost unable to speak. Qin Lei did not die. He closed his eyes, and his tears mixed with blood flowed down. He cried and said, "Is it you, Lin Muyu? I can't protect her anymore, I can't protect her anymore." Chapter 305. Lin Muyu pulled out the arrow from Qin Lei's arm, hugged him, and said in a trembling voice, it's okay, brother Qin Lei. I will protect her in your place, I won't let anyone hurt her." Qin Lei didn't say anything, his body gradually turning cold, and the last strength of his life slowly faded away. Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, and the other imperial guards all dismounted and knelt on the ground, tears flowing uncontrollably. The imperial guards of the Qin Empire, the commander of the imperial guards, Qin Lei, had died for his country. Get on the horse and find Her Highness Yin. Lin Muyu mounted the horse and wiped away the tears on his face. He thought he was just a passerby in this world, but today he was no longer. On the roadside, groups of refugees escaped from Lanyan City, but what awaited them were more and more hunting teams. Lin Muyu held the dragon spirit sword and rode back and forth with Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang and the others, but didn't kill anyone. In front of them, a group of ragged commoners were scared out of their wits when they saw them in the Iha nation's military uniform, but they couldn't run anymore. They just sat in the forest and cried bitterly. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and rode forward, saying, "Don't cry, we're not from the Iha nation. Let me ask you, do you know where Her Highness Qin Yin is?" You're not from the Iha nation?" A young girl about 20 years old asked while crying. "Yes, no, we're the Imperial Army, but we've changed into the Iha nation's uniform." "Then you—" The young girl suddenly burst into tears, rushing forward and waving her fists to hit Lin Muyu, crying and saying, "You trash! What Imperial Army? You actually let the dogs of the Iha nation kill so many innocent commoners. You're not the Imperial Army, you're just a bunch of trash, a bunch of useless trash." Lin Muyu endured her beating without saying a word. Perhaps she deserved it. Every imperial soldier had an undeniable responsibility for the fall of Lanyan City. On the side, Wei Chou's eyes were cold, and he shouted in a low voice, "Enough! Do you think we don't want to fight? Do you think we have fewer casualties? Do you know that the 17,000 soldiers of the Flying Mount Battalion have already been annihilated? Do you know that in order to save you, only 1,000 of the 20,000 soldiers of the Empire were left in the Longdan army camp? Do you know that the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Lei, and the commander of the Flying Mount Battalion, Chu Huaying, have already died for their country? Do you know that the person you are fighting has killed hundreds of Iha soldiers? Yes, you're all civilians. You can choose not to participate in the war, but Lanyan City is our home. No one can shirk the responsibility for the destruction of our home. We're soldiers, and it's our duty to fight for our country. But please don't humiliate our dignity as soldiers." The young girl stood there in a daze. After a long while, she sobbed and said, Can we still go home in the future?" "I will." Lin Muyu said softly, "Lanyan City will definitely be recovered. It won't take long. Run as far as you can. When you hear the news that Lanyan City has been recovered, you can go home." "Thank you, my lord." "Let's go." The group of civilians stood up and left. At this moment, An old man holding a horsehead zither came over and said, "My lord, the person you're looking for is Her Highness Qin Yin. This old man doesn't know her, but I saw a group of people just now. Among them, there was a woman with an extraordinary bearing. She didn't look like a woman from an ordinary family, and she was holding a zither that looked very expensive." "A zither?" Lin Muyu was stunned and asked, "Where is she?" "She's in the forest to the east. It happened a few minutes ago." "Okay, thank you, old man." Lin Muyu glanced at Wei Chou and the others and said, "Full speed ahead. We found Xiao Yin." But more than a dozen people passed through the forest. Further ahead, there was indeed a group of refugees. There were about 200 people, and all of them were staggering. Lanyan City was huge, and the moment they escaped from Lanyan City, they were already exhausted. Yet, they still had to suffer the pursuit of countless Iha Kingdom cavalry. An old woman turned around and saw Lin Muyu and the others. She immediately shouted in terror, "Oh no, oh no, the Iha Kingdom demons are here again. They're here again." However, no one seemed to be able to run. One of the middle-aged men held a shovel and said, "Fight them to the death." "Yes, fight them to the death." As Lin Muyu galloped over, the man with the shovel suddenly bent down and swept the front hooves of Jedi. However, Jedi was a fine horse bred in the endless forest, and he leaped to avoid it. Lin Muyu quickly turned back and whispered, "Don't attack, we're not Iha Kingdom soldiers." However, the sound of a sword being unsheathed came from behind. Lin Muyu suddenly turned back and saw the golden god-binding chain's martial soul hovering around the blade. He hurriedly lifted his cloak and shouted, "Xiao Yin, it's me." Qin Yin suddenly cried out, and the zither in her hands fell to the ground. She leaped into Lin Muyu's arms and cried loudly, but she didn't say a word. Lin Muyu hugged Qin Yin and gently stroked her back. After nearly 10 minutes, Qin Yin finally raised her head and said, "Yanlan City has fallen. The empire no longer exists. No, the empire will be rebuilt, and our home can be rebuilt, but we can't lose confidence." Lin Muyu looked at her deeply and said, "Xiao Yin, you must be strong. All of us are waiting for you to lead us to rebuild the empire." Qin Yin responded with a whimper, and her tears fell uncontrollably. "How is Yanlan City?" "All 4 sides of the city wall have fallen." Lin Muyu said in a trembling voice. "Chu Huayin died for the empire. Qin Lei also died for the empire." Qin Yin's body trembled slightly, and she looked in the direction of Yanlan City with teary eyes. "What happened to the empire? Brother Yu, do you have any news of Commander Feng Jixing?" Lin Muyu shook her head and said, "Xiao Yin, do you have any news of Chu and Chief Deacon Lei Hong?" "Chu Yao, do you know anything?" Qin Yin said, "Chu was originally with us, but in order to divert the attention of the volunteer soldiers, we got separated. Chief Deacon Lei Hong escorted the medical officers of the Spiritual Medicine Department to seek refuge in the Holy Temple. Sister Chu Yao is among them, but I heard that Luo Lan, the God State expert, has already gone to the Holy Temple. I'm afraid Sister Chu Yao will be fine." Lin Muyu said blankly, but even she couldn't convince herself with these words. At this moment, Wei Chou suddenly said in a low voice, "Commander, there are people coming. They are from the Iha nation, and there are at least 1,000 cavalrymen. What should we do? If we leave, I'm afraid Princess Yin and the people will." "We won't leave." Lin Muyu said indifferently, "Even if we die, we must protect this group of people. But don't act rashly. We can't beat 1,000 cavalrymen." Lin Muyu turned her horse around and walked over to the Iha nation soldiers. There was a captaincy in this group, and when he saw Lin Muyu's military rank, he immediately cupped his fists and smiled. "So it's the general here. This subordinate is Captaincy Ding Shi of Sunset City. I wonder why the general is here, with a group of traitors of the empire? So it's General Ding Shi." Lin Muyu smiled and said, "I've been fighting non-stop these days, and my body is a little tired. When I chased here, I found a zither girl in the crowd who knows how to play music, so, I stayed behind to listen to her play a few songs." Ding Shi's gaze swept across Qin Yin in the crowd, and a trace of shock flashed across his face. Then he revealed an understanding expression. The general has a good eye. The marshal has already ordered the massacre of the city. If the general likes this girl, you can take her with you. As for these traitors of the empire, this subordinate will take care of them for the general. No need. Lin Muyu raised her hand and said, "Don't let the blood spoil the mood. General Ding, go by yourself. This group of people? I will take care of them myself later. Don't worry." "Yes, General." "Then this subordinate? This subordinate will also stay behind and listen to a song with the general before embarking on the journey." "Okay." Lin Muyu sat down cross-legged. Wei Chou, Xiahou sang, and the others also sat down. Under Lin Muyu's gaze, Qin Yin lifted her cloak to cover her face. She silently sat cross-legged on the grass. After straightening the strings of the zither, she slowly began to play. Her red lips moved slightly, and she sang the battle song of the Qin Empire, the Ballad of the Autumn Goose. Every word fell on the heart of every soldier of the empire like a drizzle. The world is vast, the mountains and rivers are vast, the cold moonlight shines into the battlefield, the rice river is green, the breeze is blowing, the warriors of the empire go to war together to kill all the jackals and wolves, a life of frivolity, who will comfort my wounds, the road home is already impossible to look forward to, only sighing at the high mountains and long rivers, unhindered in all directions, forever defending the country. What harm is there for the soul to return to the ends of the earth? Broken battle robes, warriors, where will the autumn goose be buried? Please take my soul back to the hometown. When the song ended, Wei Chou, Xiahou sang, and the others all had tears in their eyes. Lin Muyu also felt a lump in her throat, thinking of the deaths of Chu Huayin, Qin Lei, and the others. Perhaps this song of Qin Yin could comfort these dead souls, as well as herself and Wei Chou, the remaining soldiers of the empire? Ding Shi's eyes also turned red. He turned over and mounted his horse, cupping his fists, and said, "General, I will take my leave. I hope that General will take care of yourself. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, there is still hope for the future." Lin Muyu was stunned. Could it be that Ding Shi already knew that the girl playing the zither was Qin Yin? It must be, but Ding Shi actually let them go. Not long after Ding Shi led his troops away, the sound of hooves came from the east again. A large group of people rushed out of the forest, holding the battle flag of the Longdan army camp in their hands. Although this group of people looked battered and exhausted, under the morning light, the empire's insignia on their chests glowed with a charming luster. It was Luo Yu and the others. "Milord." Luo Yu also recognized Lin Muyu and the others. She immediately dismounted and knelt down, saying, "We didn't find Her Highness Ing. It's okay, I found her." Lin Muyu stretched out her hand and pointed behind her, saying, "Quickly come and greet Her Highness Ing." Immediately, more than 1,000 Longdan army camp mercenaries dismounted and knelt down on one knee, saying, "Your subordinates greet Her Highness Ing." Qin Yin was moved. She raised her hand, saying, "All of you rise." Lin Muyu said, "Time is of the essence, don't delay anymore. Wei Chou, Luo Yu, the two of you join forces and escort Her Highness Ing out of Lanyan City." "Milord, where are we going?" Luo Yu asked. "Dragon Rocky Mountain." Lin Muyu thought for a moment, then said, "After getting in touch with Cloud Province, escort Her Highness to Twilight Rain City. No matter what, Duke Yun is Her Highness' maternal grandfather, he will protect her." "Yes." Looking at the way Lin Muyu mounted the horse, Luo Yu was stunned. She asked, "Milord, where are you going?" "I'm going to look for Chu Yao." Lin Muyu's expression darkened, and she said, "Once Big Brother Chu Huayin is dead, I will be his only relative. I must find Chu Yao, otherwise, I will be letting down Big Brother Chu's spirit in heaven." "Your subordinate will go with you." "Don't be ridiculous, you guys escort Her Highness out of here. I can come and go freely by myself. You guys will only be a burden if you follow me." "Yes, milord, you," Qin Yin suddenly called out softly. "What's the matter, Xiao Yin?" Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Although Qin Yin's heart was filled with unease, she smiled slightly and gave him her best look, saying, "The mountains are long and the rivers are far, we will meet again if fate allows it." "Yes, we will meet again." Lin Muyu nodded and rode away. Chapter 306. South of the Seven Seas Province, Jianfeng Ridge, a lone peak pierced the clouds. Banners fluttered at the foot of the mountain. The Jianfeng Ridge Barracks was also one of the 3 major garrisons in the Seven Seas Province. There were 70,000 soldiers stationed at the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks, and they surrounded and protected each other with the Seven Seas Pass. The real purpose was nothing more than to prevent Lanyan City from suddenly attacking. But now, the empire no longer existed, and this army seemed to have become a barrier against the iron hooves of the Iha nation. Thud, thud, amidst the sound of hooves, a snow-white steed galloped over from the official road. On the back of the steed was a beautiful young lady in a black cloak. Under the moonlight, her eyes were filled with anxiety and helplessness. When she arrived at the barracks gate, a group of soldiers immediately surrounded her and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks?" Tang Xiaoxi flipped off the steed, and a beautiful face appeared in front of everyone. A 10-man squad leader immediately knelt down with his spear and said, "Princess Shi." Immediately, everyone knelt down in a circle. Tang Xiaoxi looked at everyone indifferently and said, "Bring me to Commander Tang Zhen of the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks." Tang Zhen was promoted to the commander of the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks after the Battle of Demon Subduing Pass. He was considered one of the important generals of the Seven Seas City. When Tang Xiaoxi rode the steed to the front of the central tent, Tang Zhen had already come out to welcome her. He cupped his fists and said, "Subordinate Tang Zhen greets Princess Shi. May I know what brings Princess Shi to the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks?" "Commander Tang Zhen, please send troops to reinforce Lanyan City," Tang Xiaoxi said resolutely. Tang Zhen sighed and shook his head. "It's too late. Just this afternoon, we received news that Lanyan City has been breached. Her Highness Qin Yin is missing. The Flying Mount Camp and the Imperial Guards have been annihilated. It said that Chu Huayin and Qin Lei died in battle. Feng Jixing led 30,000 Imperial Guards out of the encirclement." "What?" Tang Xiaoxi retreated a few steps and fell onto her steed. This news was like a bolt from the blue, and she couldn't accept it. "Princess Shi, are you all right?" Tang Zhen asked with concern. Tang Xiaoxi felt a sharp pain in her chest. She clutched her chest and frowned. "Where's Mu? How's Lin Muyu?" Tang Zhen said, "Lin Muyu led 15,000 Longdan army camp soldiers to a bitter battle with Long Qianlin's main force outside the city's north. After killing 70,000 volunteers, the entire army was annihilated. Lin Muyu's whereabouts are unknown." Tang Xiaoxi felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood there dumbfounded, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Princess we..." Tang Zhen wanted to say something but stopped. "This morning, this general had received Duke Lan's letter and ordered me to hold back no matter what. Without his orders, I cannot even deploy a single soldier." Tang Xiaoxi took out a token from her bosom. It was an iron order of the Tang sect. She said, "Tang Zhen, I order you to immediately deploy 50,000 soldiers to Lanyan City with me. In addition, send the winged cavalry to the Demon Subduing Pass and send an order to Linghu Yen. Order her to deploy 100,000 Demon Clan troops to reinforce Lanyan City with us." "But, Princess, what? Do you want to disobey the iron order of the Tang sect? Are you still a general of the Tang family? Are you still a general of the Qin Empire?" I. Tang Zhen gritted his teeth and said, "Yes, sir." Tang Xiaoxi's beautiful eyes looked at the stars in the southern sky. "It was dim there," she murmured. "Mu Shaoyin, you must hold on until I come. Don't die." In Lanyan City, there were ruins everywhere. It was a mess. Lin Muyu's nose was filled with the strong smell of blood. He rode slowly on Tongtian Street. On the street, there were piles of cold corpses, and flies were flying. Farther away, the soldiers of the Iha kingdom were holding a banquet. They surrounded a group of women in Lanyan City and roasted them with bonfires. They listened to the screams of the girls for fun. Lin Muyu clenched his fists, and the golden martial soul lingered on his arms. But he held back in the end. Yes, he had more important things to do. He could not die here. He quietly came to the holy temple, only to find that it was already on fire. The fire was blazing, just like the fire of Huoshi in the distance. The entire imperial capital was in a state of death. In front of the temple, there was a huge crater. Lin Muyu furrowed his brows. His spirit pulse technique detected traces of spiritual energy coming from the rubble. He dismounted from his horse and rummaged through the rubble. Finally, a pitch-black nether stone thumb ring appeared in front of him. This was the gift he gave to Lei Hong. Lei Hong had once said that he wouldn't throw this thumb ring away even if he died. A rather familiar aura filled the air. This was the aura of Lei Hong's power. But Lin Muyu could not feel Lei Hong's life force. He had already disappeared with the wind. Holding the thumb ring, the cold wind blew on his face. His body trembled slightly, and he felt an indescribable heartache. He slowly knelt in the rubble and curled his body in pain. He was like a shrimp, shivering miserably in the cold wind and crying softly. Lei Hong had died in battle, and the holy temple had been burned to the ground. But where was Chu Yao? After a long time, Lin Muyu stood up in the rubble again. Beside him, the Jedi warhorse snorted, waiting for its master's orders. This was indeed a good horse. It had not eaten for a few days, but it still had a lot of energy. Jumping on the horse, Lin Muyu came to the front of the spiritual medicine division. But he found that the door of the spiritual medicine division was already broken. He slowly urged the horse in, but there was no one. The main hall of the spiritual medicine division was filled with corpses. Almost all the pharmacists had been killed, but there was no corpse of Chu Yao. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Suddenly, a voice came from the medicine cabinet in the corner. Lin Muyu walked forward and said indifferently, "Come out." But the person was still trembling and begging, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." In a fit of rage, Lin Muyu raised her sword and slashed the cabinet open. Behind her was a man hugging his knees, trembling uncontrollably. His shoulder was covered in blood, as if he had been slashed by a sword, and he looked rather familiar. It was Luo Bin, the son of Minister Luo Xing. "Luo Bin?" Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and asked, "Why are you hiding here?" Luo Bin also recognized Lin Muyu, and hurriedly crawled over to hug the front leg of the Jedi warhorse. "Lin Muyu, take me away, take me away. I don't want to die, I don't want to die." Lin Muyu looked at him in disgust. "I'm asking you, where did Chu Yao go?" "Jiao? Chu Yao left with Qin Yan and the rest. They are being chased, to the south gate." "South gate?" Lin Muyu snorted coldly, turned his horse around, and left. People like Luo Bin should be left to fend for themselves. The night passed quickly, and when Lin Muyu arrived at the south gate, he found that there were only some Iha country guards here. He didn't see Qin Yan, Chu Yao, and the rest. "Milord, are you patrolling at night?" a guard asked respectfully. Lin Muyu didn't speak, but the spirit pulse technique transmitted a threatening power he had never felt before. A vast domain descended from the sky, and he hurriedly raised his head to see a person walking through the air, and a palm filled with divine power came crashing down. It came too quickly. Lin Muyu hurriedly leaped off the horse's back with falling star steps. However, she only heard a cry of agony. The Jedi warhorse had been smashed into pieces just like that. Her heart ached. At the same time, she raised her head and saw that the person was floating in the air. His golden robes fluttered in the wind as he looked at her with a pair of eyes filled with disdain. "Luolan, it was you who killed Great Deacon Lei Hong?" Lin Muyu said coldly. Luolan smiled faintly. "It was me, but compared to Lei Hong, I want to know how capable you, one of the 4 heroes of Lan Yen, are to be put in such an important position by that old dog Qin Jin." "Bastard!" Lin Muyu knew that he couldn't escape and could only fight with his life on the line. He swung his blade and increased his battle energy to 100%. With a shout, the blood in his body boiled, and the golden gourd martial soul's light shot into the sky. For a moment, the world spun, and the universe reversed. It was as if all the power in the world could be used by him. 6 Glorious Heavenly Calamity. Yo, fighting with your life on the spot? Luo Lan smiled faintly and slowly opened his hand. The demon blood saber's light shot into the sky, and its aura did not lose to the 6 Glorious Heavenly Calamity. Lin Muyu's heart went cold. Under Luo Lan's godly state domain, it was already difficult for her to raise her battle energy. Forcibly activating the 6 Glorious Heavenly Calamity brought her endless pain, and her body felt as if it would explode at any moment. At this moment, the voice of the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor came from the depths of her high. Heavens! You want to fight with a god? You lunatic! Lin Muyu roared, do I have any other choice? Help me. The 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor sighed sorrowfully, I owe you my whole life. This time, I'm really going to be dragged down by you. It's a pity that I've just cultivated a complete godhead. Sigh. Suddenly, the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor let out a shrill cry, and immediately, Lin Muyu felt strands of divine power entering her high. The strands of golden warmth quickly flowed into the long sword, and increased the power of the 6 Glorious Heavenly Calamity. Come on. Luo Lan looked at him as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and laughed heartily. That old dog Qin Jin has sealed the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning generals, so I'll just kill them all. The demon blood saber met the dragon spirit sword that was strengthened by the golden gourd. Boom! There was an explosion, and the entire South City Gate was once again corroded. Even many of the Iha Nation soldiers who could not dodge in time were swallowed up by the divine power. The demon blood saber emitted a strong devouring power, causing the divine power in Lin Muyu's body to quickly dissipate. This 6 Glorious Heavenly Calamity was defeated. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Lin Muyu felt a burning pain in her shoulder. The demon blood saber's cold light had actually cut into her body, and blood flowed out. Ah, he roared angrily, and continued to press down the dragon spirit sword with all his might. With a bang, it slashed through the air at Luo Lan's righteous chi, but at the same time, the power of the 6 Glorious Heavenly Calamity left the blade. Light-splitting slash. Luo Lan let out a muffled groan, and looked at the sword wound on his chest in disbelief. Blood gushed out wildly. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu suffered an even stronger backlash, and with a miserable howl, she crashed into the broken wall of the city. At the same time, with a roar, Icatosaurus penetrated through the plain and pounced at Luo Lan with its claws and fangs bared. Evil creature, die! Luo Lan's 5 fingers were like claws, and with one strike, it pierced through Icatosaurus's head and directly crushed the crystal core. Icatosaurus, dead. This attack did not stop. Luo Lan looked at the heavily injured Lin Muyu with a ferocious expression, and with absolute crushing strength, he suddenly stabbed his 5 claws into Lin Muyu's chest. Blood spurted out, and he cackled, "You are just a piece of trash. What right do you have to think that you can change the laws of this world? Pa, I am a god, only I can set the laws of this world." The light in Lin Muyu's eyes was the light of destruction and despair. He looked at Luo Lan and lightly said, "Kill me. If this world cannot destroy me, then I will definitely destroy this world." Blood flowed, and Luo Lan grabbed Lin Muyu's heart and directly crushed it. That wisp of spiritual sense finally dissipated, and Lin Muyu could no longer see anything. Emptiness. Everything returned to emptiness. Was this the feeling of death? Icatosaurus's corpse lay quietly next to its master's corpse. The red crystal scales on its body rapidly melted into blood, enveloping Lin Muyu's body, and condensed into dark red ice crystals. In the next moment, the ice crystals crazily devoured everything around them, and even Luo Lan was forced to take a few steps back. In the blink of an eye, Icatosaurus's corpse had become a giant ice crystal with a radius of 10 meters, lying in the rubble of the south gate of Yanlan City. Vaguely, a human figure could be seen lying in the red ice crystal, motionless, without a sound. Lin Muyu, dead in battle. End of the first volume. Falling Lilies and Falling Lilies. Notes: Falling lilies and falling lilies, hun, refers to flowers falling from trees, some falling on mats, and some falling into manure pits. It means that people are born unequal, some born in the royal family, some born in the poor. Many people are born with different responsibilities than others, and Qin Yin's name comes from this idiom. Qin Yin is like a flower on a tree, falling into the royal family, but also has to bear a completely different fate. Next, I welcome everyone to continue reading the second volume, Silver Flowers. A new chapter in history is about to open. Chapter 307. The next day, the news of Lin Muyu's death spread in Lanyan City. The soldiers of the Iha kingdom celebrated with each other. To them, Lin Muyu was like a mark of death. What kind of person could kill the 70,000 elite soldiers of the Iha kingdom with only 15,000 soldiers? With the death of Lin Muyu, the Longdan army camp was gone, and the nightmare of the Iha kingdom was gone. On April 15, 7731 of the Empire calendar, Lin Muyu, one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan City, died in battle. At this point, no one in Lanyan City dared to resist the soldiers of the Iha kingdom. The Qin Empire was officially destroyed on this day. On the same day, the 12 provinces of the empire fell into the hands of the Iha kingdom, except for Qihai province and Yunzhong province. The Iha kingdom was officially established, and the capital was set in Bailing City in the Lingnan. The people elected Qin Yi, the prince of Jinan, as the commander-in-chief, to command the world. 3 days later, Qihai City and Muyu City sent letters of submission at the same time. Tang Lan and Su Muyun had already recognized Qin Yi as the commander-in-chief. At this point, the world was unified and belonged to the Iha kingdom. Dozens of miles west of the Tianming mountain, there was a camp with a flag flying in the air. This was the only place in the empire where the Qin family's purple Yinhua flag was still flying. Imperial Army. In the main tent, Feng Jixing looked haggard. There was no trace of his former high spirits. So what if he had 30,000 imperial soldiers? After all, he couldn't stop the collapse of the whole empire. Luo Lai opened the tent and stepped in. He said, "Commander, they have already set up camp 10 miles away. Long Qianlin has personally led the troops." "The troops? How many troops?" Feng Jixing looked up at him. Luo Lai cupped his fists and said, "A total of 300,000 troops." Feng Jixing felt a chill in his heart. He murmured, "What other news?" Luo Lai said, "Chu Huayin and Qin Lei died in battle. In addition, I received news this morning that Lady Lin Muyu." "What happened to you?" Feng Jixing shuddered. "Master Lin Muyu was killed by Luo Lan 3 days ago. He self-destructed at the south gate of Yanlan City. Many people saw his body frozen in purple ice." Feng Jixing's fist slowly landed on the table. A trickle of blood flowed down his chin and landed on the white dossier. He did not dare to raise his head, nor did he want to. Luo Lai continued, "Long Qianlin wants to see you." "I won't see him." Feng Jixing lowered his head and said, "Pass down my order to the entire army. We'd rather die in glory than live in dishonor. Prepare for battle." Luo Lai wanted to say something but hesitated. After pausing for a few seconds, he said, "Commander, the empire is no longer here. There is no news of Her Highness Ying. It is said that Great Deacon Lei Hong and Chu have been killed by Luo Lan. Is there any meaning in us persisting like this? Why don't we let Long Qianlin come to the main tent and listen to what he has to say? Long Qianlin killed Chu Huayin and still dares to come see me?" Feng Jixing said angrily, "Isn't he afraid that I will chop him into pieces?" "Sir," Feng Jixing took a deep breath. He seemed to have aged a lot and said, "Let him come." Not long after, a flying general entered the imperial army's camp. It was Long Qianlin. "Dismount," Luo Lai shouted in a low voice. Long Qianlin raised his hands and smiled faintly. "I didn't even bring a weapon. There is no need to be so nervous." Long Qianlin's expression was still calm when he entered the main tent. It was only when he saw Feng Jixing's blood-red eyes that he finally felt a deep chill. "Are you here to die?" Feng Jixing said indifferently as he wiped his saber. Long Qianlin turned around and sat down on a seat. "General Feng, the empire has lost. Are you still unwilling to accept this fact? Accept? Feng Jixing laughed wildly. You destroyed everything I had, and now you want me to accept it? You killed my Feng Jixing's brothers, you killed my Feng Jixing's emperor, and you want me to accept it? Long Qianlin, you bastard, how can I accept it? You are a general of the empire. You helped a tiger and slaughtered the people of Lanyan City. Aren't you afraid of retribution? Long Qianlin sat there dejectedly and said calmly, why don't you think about the pain of my parents and siblings being executed by Qin Jin when you said such words? Qin Jin killed my family, so why can't I kill his family? The massacre of Lanyan City is not something I, Long Qianlin, can control. I'm just a general, not a marshal. Your Iha nation? Feng Jixing choked and said, your Iha nation calls us the hawks and dogs of the empire, but aren't you, Long Qianlin, the hawks and dogs of Iha nation too? Long Qianlin was slightly taken aback. General Feng, are you determined to fight? But can the 30,000 imperial guards be a match for the 300,000 soldiers of Iha nation? Long Qianlin's eyes were filled with coldness. Do you know that I've prepared 5,000 barrels of black beech oil and enough fire starters? Once the battle starts, I'll use catapults to throw the black beech oil into the Imperial Guard's camp. I'll fire arrows randomly and set up an ambush with an arrow formation. Perhaps I can kill all 30,000 of your Imperial Guards without losing a single soldier. Feng Jixing's heart turned cold. He said angrily, Long Qianlin, what exactly do you want? Long Qianlin stood up, cupped his fists, and said, I know that General Feng is a benevolent general. You won't let the 30,000 Imperial Guards die in vain, so I, Long Qianlin, am willing to use my head as a guarantee. As long as General Feng is willing to surrender and disarm the 30,000 Imperial Guards, I'm willing to guarantee your safety. Not a single one of these 30,000 Imperial Guards will die. Even if General Feng isn't afraid of death, do you not care about the life and death of these 30,000 Imperial Guards? Feng Jixing sat there in pain. His face was filled with disappointment. After a long time, he looked up at Luo Lai and said, gather all the Kiliarchs and have them vote. If more than half of them are willing to surrender, we will surrender. Luo Lai nodded. Feng Jixing looked at Long Qianlin and said coldly, if you lie to me, Feng Jixing, I promise that I'll personally chop off your head. Remember that. Long Qianlin cupped his fists and said, yes. At dusk, the Imperial Guard's army surrendered and handed their weapons and horses to the Iha country people. Everyone set up camp in the Fire Badger Valley not far away. Feng Jixing was invited into the main tent of Iha country and was personally received by General Qin Yi. The tent was brightly lit and there was plenty of wine and meat. It wasn't something the Imperial Guard's camp could compare to. Qin Yi looked at Feng Jixing, one of the 7 generals of the empire, and cupped his fists. Qin Yi greets General Feng. Feng Jixing nodded his head. I greet King Zhennan. I would like to ask you a question. Qin Yi laughed out loud. A bright light shot out from Feng Jixing's eyes and he said, how did His Majesty die? Are you talking about Qin Jin? Qin Yi smiled and said softly, I personally strangled him to death in the shallow water. Feng Jixing's expression was dejected, the energy of the purple lightning flame wolf wrapped around his fists. But at that moment, a cold voice spread out from behind him. Feng Jixing, if you want to attack, then your 30,000 Imperial Guards army will die with you. The one who spoke was Lulon, the only god here. Feng Jixing's fists loosened and he cupped his fists. I am not feeling well, so I will return to camp first. Your Highness, please excuse me. Qin Yi nodded his head and smiled. General Feng, I won't send you off. Right when Feng Jixing rushed back to Fire Badger Valley in a daze, he noticed that flames surged into the sky. The Imperial Guard's camp had already turned into a purgatory. Numerous Imperial Guard's army soldiers cried out miserably in the flames. Those who wanted to charge out were quickly killed by the Iha country archers. In an instant, Feng Jixing's eyes turned red and he pulled out his wind cutter blade. Bastard! The blade swept across, and the heads of a few archers flew into the sky. Feng Jixing looked at the Imperial Guards who were howling miserably in the fire. He was like a frenzied beast as he cried loudly and slashed at the group of volunteer soldiers like a madman. He didn't care about the wounds on his body at all, but it was useless. How many people could he kill alone? As for the Imperial Guard's army, 30,000 of them would become corpses tonight. In the forest not far away, Long Qianlin's hands were tied behind his back. He was tied to a tree and the flames shone on his ashen white face. Tears flowed down his face as he shouted, "Ji Yao, why did you lie to me? Why did you lie to me?" Ji Yao's gaze was ice cold. "General Long, you are one of the founding fathers of Yihe country. Remember this forever. If Feng Jixing's 30,000 Imperial Guards army doesn't die, Yihe country won't be stable." "Bastard, you bastard!" Long Qianlin roared, "Someone untie me. Save them. Hurry up and save them." But none of the soldiers dared to move. Ji Yao said coldly, "Long Qianlin, I'm not as good as you when it comes to commanding troops and fighting battles. But when it comes to making decisions, you're just a hothead. Learn well. I brought these brave soldiers from Lingnan. Do you think they will listen to you, a temporary general, instead of me?" Long Qianlin looked powerlessly at the flames in the distance. It was chaos there. Miserable cries mixed with the sound of the wind. Tears streamed down his face as he roared at the sky. "Feng Jixing, Feng Jixing. I, Long Qianlin, can't repay this debt of blood even if I'm cut into 1,000 pieces." Throughout the night, when the flames were extinguished, the soldiers' cries could no longer be heard. Feng Jixing's armor was badly damaged by the flames. He sat on a pile of corpses in a daze. The wind cutter in his hand was nowhere to be seen. He stared blankly into the distance and murmured, "Bastard, bastard, bastard." He slowly stood up and found his wind slasher saber. Then he began to dig the soil. After digging a pit, he dragged a few corpses of the Imperial army that had been burnt beyond recognition and buried them. He repeated this process repeatedly, as if he was a machine that did not know fatigue, until the web between his thumb and forefinger split open and blood flowed down the wind slasher saber. Amidst the lingering smoke, Long Qianlin couldn't bear to watch anymore. He turned to the soldiers beside him and said, "Send him food every day. I'm afraid that if we don't bury all 30,000 Imperial Guards army corpses, Feng Jixing won't be willing to say another word to anyone." "Yes, General." At this moment, a messenger galloped over from afar. His face was filled with shock as he said, "General, something bad has happened." "What's the matter?" "A large number of Qihai City and Demon Race troops have appeared outside the southern city of Lanyan City. There are a total of 150,000 of them. They seem to be led by Tang Xiaoxi and Tang Jin from Qihai City. The commander has ordered me to summon you back to command the brave soldiers to resist the enemy." "Resist the enemy?" A chill flashed across Long Qianlin's eyes as he said, "Does Yihe country still want me, Long Qianlin, to serve them?" Chapter 308. Dong, dong, dong. The sound of war drums echoed in the south of Lanyan City. The 100,000 Demon Clan troops and the 50,000 soldiers of Qihai City were lined up. Their equipment was in place in an orderly manner, and the war was about to begin. Tang Xiaoxi was wearing a black cloak with a golden purple flower emblem on her chest. Her beautiful eyes were looking at the civilian corpses piled up like mountains in front of her, as well as the southern city wall that was still being repaired after the collapse, where Lin Muyu had died. Tang Xiaoxi's shoulders trembled slightly. She closed her eyes, and tears slid down her snow-white face. She gently raised her long sword and said in a low voice, "Prepare for war. An eye for an eye." Beside her, Ling Huyen was riding a fine horse. Her eyes flashed with a strange look as she said, "Your Highness, the city wall of Lanyan City is already riddled with holes. It's not enough to be a natural stronghold. Let's send the Serpentmen army to charge first. In such a terrain, it's impossible for Yihe country to form a cavalry phalanx. The terrain of rocks and weeds is our world." Tang Xiaoxi nodded and said to Tang Jin, "General Tang Jin, prepare the bow and arrow array and the spear array. If the cavalry of Yihe country comes out, you will resist them. The demon clan is not good at facing cavalry. You should know that. Yes, your highness. Tangjin cupped his fists, his eyes stern. The sound of war drums became louder and louder. A large number of serpent men came to the front of the battle array, spitting out their blood-red tongues. Their bodies were covered with scales, and they held steel sabers in their hands. Their brown eyes were full of mania and greed as they looked at Lanyan City. The serpent men were warlike by nature, and this was an excellent opportunity for them to kill. Facing the thousands of troops outside the southern city, the owner of Lanyan City, the army of Iha country, was moved. Many soldiers had never seen the demon clan. Now seeing the serpent men and lizard men brandishing their sabers, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Qin Yi, wearing a golden battle robe, stood majestically on a complete section of the city wall. Beside him was a group of Iha country's civil and military officials. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Didn't Chihai City already declare its allegiance to Iha country? Why did Tangjin bring Chihai City's army to invade again?" Jiao cupped his fists and said, "Reporting to Commander, everything is because of Tang Xiaoxi. This princess of Seven Seas City used the Tang Sect's iron order to forcibly mobilize the 50,000 troops under Tang Zhen. In addition, in the Battle of Demon Subduing Pass, Lin Muyu helped her establish some kind of contract with the demon race. Therefore, Tang Xiaoxi possesses the entire demon race's military force. This is something we did not expect." "Bastard!" Qin Yi punched the battlement, causing dust to fly up. He said with an ice-cold gaze, "It's Lin Muyu again. This Lin Muyu really haunts us. Fortunately, Senior Immortal Luolan killed her, otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be so easy for us to enter Lanyan City. By the way, has Senior Immortal left?" Ji Yao said, "We lost a total of 4 Sacred Peak experts this time. Senior Immortal is very angry and left North Ridge Province yesterday morning. Before he left, he ordered us to build a palace at the foot of Sacred Peak with gold, silver, diamond, glass, and jade. I'm afraid this will waste a lot of our national resources." Qin Yi smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter. As long as Luolan is here, our country will not be lost. But right now, Tang Xiaoxi has challenged us and the demon race is about to attack the city. Why hasn't Long Qianlin returned yet?" Ji Yao pursed his lips and said, "The commander reported that Long Qianlin was injured when he burned the 30,000 Imperial Guards last night. In the morning he had a high fever, so he can't come to command the army." "Humph," Qin Yi frowned and said, "Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used on a single day. He actually fell sick at this time. Long Qianlin is after all not someone our Lingnan generals can compare to. Ji Yao, there are 100 generals in our Iha country. Long Qianlin is not the only one who can lead the army to war. You recommend someone to kill their way out of the city and drive back the demon race army." Ji Yao cupped his fists and said, "How about Great General LV Zhao? LV Zhao is from Lingnan and is well-versed in the art of war. He is also a general you have personally trained. He can be of great use." Qin Yi nodded, his eyes revealing a trace of regret. "It's a pity that my great general Lin Yu was killed by that scoundrel Lin Muyu. Otherwise, with Lin Yu's ability, why would he be afraid of a motley crew of 150,000? Pass down my order. LV Zhao will be the main general and order him to stop Tang Xiaoxi's army. No mistakes are allowed." "Yes." Ji Yao raised his head and said, "Great General, I just received news that the Empire's remnant, Qin Yin, has been escorted to Dragon Rocky Mountain by the Empire's lackeys from the Longdan army camp. Currently, 3,000 troops from Sunset City are surrounding Dragon Rocky Mountain. What do you think?" "Qin Yin." Qin Yi clenched his teeth and said, "Evil must be eradicated. As long as Qin Yin is alive, she will be thinking of restoring the empire. This is a disaster for all the people in the world. Ji Yao, choose another general and lead 100,000 troops to attack Dragon Rocky Mountain." 100,000? Ji Yao was stunned. "Great General, if we split another 100,000 troops, we will only have 200,000 to defend Yulon City." I'm afraid we may not be able to quickly defeat the 150,000 troops led by Tang Xiaoxi. Qin Yi's eyes were cold. A mere dragon rocky mountain can be trampled into powder in the blink of an eye. These 100,000 volunteers will destroy Dragon Rocky Mountain, kill Qin Yin, and then return to Yulan City to attack Tang Xiaoxi's army from the rear. Naturally, they will be able to achieve complete victory. We must be fast. Currently, we still don't know their movements, especially Su Muyun. He controls 250,000 elite troops from Cloud Middle Province and is already the most powerful feudal lord in the world. Pay attention to Su Muyun's movements at all times. Yes. There's one more thing. Your Highness, is there anything else? Jiao asked. Qin Yi narrowed his eyes and said, Feng Jixing? Is he willing to pledge allegiance to us? Feng Jixing? Jiao couldn't help but smile. A defeated general isn't enough for great general to think so highly of him, right? A defeated general? Qin Yi smiled. At the foot of Heaven's Wall Mountain, Feng Jixing defeated the Heaven's Core army with 3 retreats and 3 advances, rendering them powerless to fight back. He could even contend with our 200,000 troops with 30,000 imperial guards. How could such a person be a defeated general? If it wasn't for Qin Jin's muddle-headedness, with Feng Jixing's ability, I'm afraid he would have long since become the #1 general in the world. Ji Yao was startled and said, But great general, we've already killed all 30,000 imperial guards last night. We've even killed Luo Lai and the other generals that Feng Jixing relied on the most. I'm afraid that within a year and a half, Feng Jixing won't pledge allegiance to Iha country. Sigh. Qin Yi sighed. Feng Jixing is a ferocious tiger. If we can use him, use him. If we can't, get rid of him as soon as possible. Oh right, that huge purple crystal. Have you broken it? No, it's very hard and invulnerable. I can faintly see Lin Muyu's silhouette inside. Although he's already dead, but... No buts. Qin Yi's gaze was stern as he said, Take advantage of the night and order the convoy to secretly transport this purple crystal out of Lanyan City. Find a desolate and filthy place to bury it. I never want to see this person again. The sound of the war drums grew more intense as a large number of Iha country troops marched out of Lanyan City. Many of their weapons were still stained with blood, the blood of the civilians. The 5 million civilians in Lanyan City were not so easy to kill. The Iha country had only massacred less than a third of Lanyan City's territory. However, the civilians who had not been trampled by the iron hooves were merely rabbits in cages, waiting for the butcher's knife to fall at any time. Perhaps, the fact that Tang Xiaoxi had led the demon race to counterattack Lanyan City had actually saved these people's lives. Seeing the Iha country troops leave the city, Tang Jin grasped his weapon excitedly and said with a smile, Princess, they're ready for battle. You're about to start the war. Tang Xiaoxi narrowed her eyes. They're all infantry and shield soldiers. What are the Iha country thinking? Do they think that they can defeat the demon race army with wooden shields and padeos? Ling Hu Yen smiled slightly and said, Your Highness, can the serpent men attack now? Tang Xiaoxi nodded and said, General Tang Jin, you're well versed in the art of war. You'll be in command. Tang Jin cupped his fists and said, The terrain inside the city is complex and ever-changing. Moreover, we don't know what's going on inside Lanyan City, so the Serpentmen army can only fight the Iha country troops outside the city. When they reach the broken walls, they'll immediately turn back. Just like that, we'll continuously consume the Iha country's troops and rations. Lanyan City will return to us sooner or later. Ling Hu Yen smiled slightly and loudly ordered the Serpentmen general in the demon race's language. The Serpentmen general held an iron spear in his hand and roared loudly. Immediately, the majestic army of tens of thousands of Serpentmen immediately charged out. These terrifying Serpentmen had now become the main force in reclaiming the human empire's capital. History seemed to be playing tricks on everyone. A fine drizzle fell on the streets of Muyu City, moistening the city streets. The earth was recovering and spring had returned. The peach and pear blossoms in Muyu City had already bloomed. Su Muyun held a heavy sword in his hand and wore a suit of armor. His face was pale as he raised his head to look at the pear tree in the courtyard. He muttered, "Spring is here? The snow on the ancient cloud path should have melted by now, right?" Beside him, Su Yu's expression was downcast as she said, "Father, do you still want to wait? If we wait any longer, I'm afraid that Dragon Rocky Mountain will be breached. Shao Yin, the last bloodline of the empire, will disappear." Su Muyun smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, Dragon Rocky Mountain won't be breached so easily. Shao Yin is very strong, much stronger than her father." Su Yu revealed a puzzled expression and said, "Father, Muyu City refused to send troops, causing Lanyan City to fall. A large number of the empire's soldiers died in battle, and Shao Yin narrowly escaped death. How can you bear to see this happen?" "How can I bear to see this happen?" Su Muyun looked at the sky and said, "I, Su Muyun, only have one son, but he was killed by my son-in-law. Tell me, how can the heavens bear to do this to me, Su Muyun?" Qin Jin secretly ordered the traitor Zhang Santong to shoot Hu Tianning and force Xiang Yu to kill Hu Tianning. Did he think that all this was done without anyone knowing? If Lanyan City is in trouble today, it is only because of Qin Jin. "Father," Su Yu silently placed her hand on the hilt of her sword and said, "I just want to know, when are we going to fight our way out of the Cloud Ancient Road and rescue Shao Yin?" Chapter 309. Pile up the stones and save the arrows. Luo Yu's hoarse roar came from the walls of Dragon Rocky Mountain. His face was stained with blood, and his battle robe had turned from white to gray. A stone wall that was at least 10 meters high was piled up at the mountain gate. Only such a defense could withstand the attack of the Empire's army. Looking from afar, there was a sea of people at the foot of Dragon Rocky Mountain, and the flags of Iha Nation were raised high. Luo Yu couldn't help but shiver. He exchanged a glance with Wei Chou, but no one knew what to say. "I wonder how the commander is doing." Wei Chou held the demon-devouring bow, a trace of worry on his face. Luo Yu patted his shoulder and smiled, "Brother Wei Chou, don't worry. The commander is blessed by the heavens, nothing will happen to him." Sigh. The brothers we arranged at the foot of the mountain have already moved up. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a lack of information. In my opinion, Brother Wei Chou, you can be considered a general with both the pen and the sword. Why don't you join our Longdan army camp and become a dragon-level commander? You don't have to return to the Imperial Army. Wei Chou smiled bitterly. The Empire is gone, how can there be any Imperial Army? To Wei Chou, it's enough as long as I can protect your highness. Alright, then it's decided. You join the Longdan army camp. From today onwards, we will be brothers who will live and die together. At this moment, a group of people galloped over from the mountain. Qin Yin was wearing the plain clothes of a village girl. She dismounted and climbed up the small stone fortress. Beside her, Chu Yao and Qin Yen guarded her. "Your Highness, be careful." Chu Yao looked at the foot of the mountain and said, "They have many archers." Qin Yin nodded, "I'm fine." "Sister Chu Yao, you have to be careful too." Qin Yen, protect Sister Chu Yao. "Yes, Your Highness." Qin Yen held his shield and guarded in front of Chu Yao, like a god of war protecting her. "How's the situation?" Qin Yen asked. Luo Yu cupped her fists and said, "Your Highness, they've sent at least 50,000 troops, perhaps even more. They've surrounded Rocky Dragon Mountain, most likely intending to take it down in one fell swoop. However, it won't be that easy. Back then, when Lord Commander took down Rocky Dragon Mountain, we had already begun to reinforce it. Even the back mountain has our archers and sentries. The only passageway is easy to defend and hard to attack." Qin Yin nodded and asked, "Is there any news about Big Brother Yu?" "No." Luo Yu shook her head and said, "We've already lost contact with Yen Orchid City and even the entire continent. All the messenger birds have been lost or flown away. But don't worry, Your Highness. The Lord is blessed and will definitely be fine." Qin Yin's bright eyes were filled with endless worry as she looked at the Iha Kingdom troops at the foot of the mountain. She couldn't help but bite her red lips and said, "Perhaps, if I go down the mountain and hand myself over to the Iha Kingdom, the 1,000 troops in the Longdan army camp can still be preserved?" "No." Luo Yu, Qin Yin, Wei Chou and the others all knelt down. Luo Yu raised her head to look at Qin Yin and said, "Your Highness, you're the only bloodline of the Qin family. We've risked our lives for the Empire. If anything happens to your Highness, how are we going to answer to Lord Lin Muyu? If we lose your Highness, we'd rather commit suicide on Rocky Dragon Mountain." Qin Yin also nodded. "Yes, my royal father and his majesty were both killed by the Iha Kingdom. If I don't take revenge, I'm not human." Qin Yin looked at everyone silently and murmured, "It's the Empire's fortune that the Qin family can receive such support from everyone. Get up." However, we've been guarding the mountain blindly and don't know the situation at the foot of the mountain. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold out for long. Chu Yao said, "Your Highness, don't worry. There's enough food and water on Rocky Dragon Mountain. It shouldn't be a problem to hold out for a month. And in a month's time, your maternal grandfather should know the situation here and send reinforcements." "I hope so." Qin Yin didn't dare to hope too much for her maternal grandfather's reinforcements. Her eyes flickered with a misty light as she said, "I only hope that nothing happens to Big Brother Yu. Be careful, another wave of attacks is coming." Luo Yu narrowed her eyes and looked down the mountain. "Archers, get ready." Wei Chou raised his hand and pulled out an arrow from his quiver. "They've sent heavy shield bearers. Everyone, put on the white diamond arrowheads. The mountain path can only accommodate 20 people at most. We'll kill as many as they come up." Everyone nodded. At the foot of the mountain, the Iha nation's shield bearers had arrived. However, after being baptized by the white diamond arrowheads at the mountain gate, they were immediately killed. The white diamond arrowheads were extremely sharp and could pierce through heavy shields. In the blink of an eye, the mountain gate was filled with corpses. More than 500 volunteer soldiers had died on the mountain slope. "Be careful of the spears." Wei Chou suddenly lowered his head. Immediately, dozens of spears flew over his head. Luo Yu chuckled and said, "They've retreated." As expected, after a round of spears, the volunteer soldiers didn't even have time to clean up the corpses before retreating. "Open the gate and pull out the white diamond arrowheads from the corpses. Save them." "Yes." When a group of Longdan army camp soldiers were cleaning up the white diamond arrowheads, Chu Yao suddenly frowned. She sniffed and said, "Do you guys smell something strange?" "Yes." Qin Yi nodded and said, "It's the smell of oil." Wei Chou was startled and said, "It's the black beech oil. Damn it, are these bastards planning to use fire to attack?" "I think it's right." Luo Yu pointed into the distance and said, "Look, the catapults are already up the mountain. Our place will soon become a sea of fire, despicable southern barbarians." Wei Chou clenched his teeth. If the Iha kingdom used a catapult to hurl the flaming black beech oil up the mountain, the consequences could be imagined. Long Qianlin had used this vicious trick to force Feng Jixing to hand over the military power of the imperial army, and now the Iha kingdom had used the same trick again. At the foot of the mountain, more than 10 catapults were set up in a crisscross pattern. At the same time, the soldiers carried over barrels of black beech oil. On the side, Achillearcha's face was full of pride as he said with a smile, "Long Qianlin used 300,000 troops and still couldn't catch Qin Yin. The result is still up to me, Shaoran." At this moment, a group of people charged over from afar. Sitting on a warhorse was a general with 2 gold stars on his belt. It was Sunset City's captaincy Ding Shi. Ding Shi slowly spurred his horse over and looked at the barrels of black beech oil. He said indifferently, "What are you doing?" Shaoran cupped his fists and said, "General Ding, the remnants of the Empire on Dragon Rocky Mountain are extremely tenacious. We've been attacking for 3 days and still haven't been able to take them down. Therefore, this general has decided to attack with fire so that they can't defend themselves. This way, our heavy cavalry will be able to trample over Dragon Rocky Mountain." "Impudent!" Ding Shi raised his eyebrows and said, General Shaoren, let me ask you. Who is the commander of the 70,000 troops besieging Dragon Rocky Mountain? Shaoren was taken aback and said respectfully, Of course it's General Ding Shi. You are the commander of the Imperial Commander-in-Chief. That's good. Ding Shi said coldly, Before I give the order to burn Dragon Rocky Mountain, no one is allowed to attack with fire. Move these nuisances away and send a large number of soldiers to surround Dragon Rocky Mountain. As long as we cut off their water source, we can take down the Longdan army camp without shedding a single drop of blood. After the northern expedition, our Lingnan soldiers have already lost nearly 150,000 men. We can't afford any more casualties. Shaoren smiled like a villain and said, It's a blessing for our army that great general is compassionate towards our soldiers. This general will do it right away. We will definitely surround Dragon Rocky Mountain so that not even a fly can fly out. Ding Shi nodded and looked at Xiao Ren's departing figure. His eyes flickered and he placed a hand on the cold hilt of his sword. He murmured softly, General Lin Muyu, I respect you as a hero, but Ding Shi really doesn't know how I can help you and how I can stop the war in the world. In the spring, the sun was already extremely hot, scorching the earth with no regard for anything else. It was as if all the battles on earth had nothing to do with it. In reality, it did seem to have nothing to do with it. After nightfall, starlight shone on the earth, nourishing all living things. This originally peaceful land was bathed in blood. The villages around Lanyan City were also bathed in blood. Cries of anguish filled the land and the corpses of civilians were everywhere. Many wild dogs and hungry wolves had already scurried out of the borders of dragon-seeking forest, dragging and devouring the corpses of the massacred civilians. Gulp, gulp, a total of 8 chariots joined together, pulling a huge amethyst rock. The rock was wrapped in black cloth and tied up with ropes. A troop of 1,000 cavalrymen was used to escort the rock. Under the starlight, the caravan entered the dragon-seeking forest in a straight line, all the way to a call deep in the mountains. The Chiliarch leading the troops suddenly frowned. What's that smell? It's the stench. A centurion pointed at the call and said, Sir, look, there's a dead python here. It's been rotting for a long time, its bones are already showing. The Chiliarch rode forward and pinched his nose as he looked at the python's head, only to find 10 neatly arranged golden lines. He could not help but frown. A 10,000-year-old python is actually dead. What a pity. Men, dig its head and see if there's any spiritual stones. A few cavalrymen walked forward and checked. No, it's empty. The Chiliarch's gaze turned cold. Men, bury the purple crystal in this huge pit. A dead man and a dead snake buried together? It's quite a contrast. Sir, you're wise. Everyone hurriedly used ropes, crowbars, and other tools to overturn the huge purple crystal and toss it into the valley. Then, they began to dig up the soil and bury it inch by inch. However, the howls of wolves could be heard all around them. When the Chiliarch saw that the purple crystal was covered in soil, he immediately raised his hand and said, All right, this place is deserted anyway. No one will find this thing. Let's go. The Iha Kingdom soldiers all mounted their horses and left. However, no one noticed that the starlight in the sky was slowly gathering and shining on the soil where the purple crystal was buried, as if it was being guided by some mysterious power. Lin Ruoji, you bastard. I owed you in my previous life, and I even had to waste my divine power to protect your 3 souls and 7 spirits. A barely audible grumble came from the purple crystal. Chapter 310. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed, but the battle in Lanyan City had not stopped. The Serpentmen and Lizardmen armies were able to fully display their battle prowess in the rocky area. On the other hand, the Iha Kingdom cavalry was unable to use their charging formation and were repeatedly suppressed. For 5 consecutive days, there was no sign of them repelling the monster race army, and they even lost close to 30,000 men. The city walls were slowly being repaired. Under the canopy, Commander Qin Yi looked at the battlefield below with a livid face and said, "A bunch of trash. They can't even repel the demon race army after so long. They are simply trash." Ji Yao said indifferently, "General LV Zhao has tried his best. Tried his best." Qin Yi smiled coldly. Tried his best to sing praises for himself, right? Cutting off Qin Lei's head, soaking it in medicinal liquid, and sending it to Lingen. What can this prove? That LV Zhao is the founding father of Iha country? So the commander also knows about this. No matter what, Qin Lei is my nephew. He deserved to be killed for his stubbornness. But after his death, LV Zhao's actions disappoint me. Ji Yao cupped his fists and said, "Actually, it's mainly because, Qin Lei is one of Qin Jin's most valued generals, and he is also one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan. Therefore, General LV Zhao probably wants to use Qin Lei's head to boost the morale of Lingnan." Nonsense. Qin Yi was a little angry and said, "Summon Long Qianlin. Unless Long Qianlin comes, I'm afraid no one can defeat Tang Xiaoxi's demon race army." Ji Yao nodded, then suddenly looked up at Qin Yi and said, "Commander, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." "Say it." Ji Yao nodded. "Commander, since Iha country's capital is in Bailing City, then Lanyan City is no longer the capital. Moreover, we have slaughtered more than 1 million people in Lanyan City, and have already incurred countless grudges. Lanyan City is already tasteless to Iha country. If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid it will only be a waste of troops and food. Our provisions have to be transported from Lingnan, and it is inconvenient. Lanyan City is very close to Muyu City and Qihai City. I suggest that we withdraw from Lanyan City and set up the garrison in Tsangnan Province's 5 Valley City." In that case, Qin Yi narrowed his eyes and said, "Fine. Lanyan City is already in ruins. Let's leave it to Tang Xiaoxi. We'll come back to deal with that little girl when we regroup. Chief Commander is wise." Ji Yao bowed, then carefully said, "Commander, about the conferring of titles to the 7 marshals, when will it be done?" "Well," Qin Yi took a deep breath and said, "I wonder which 7 generals of the Iha nation are the 7 great commanders in your heart? This general is in the army, so I'm not willing to say too much. I'll let your highness make the decision. It should be up to his majesty to decide." Qin Yi also revealed a knowing smile. He looked around and said, "This title, in the future, don't ever call me that in a place with many people. Don't forget that Iha country belongs to the people of the world. We treat people with benevolence and all living things are equal. There is no king." "Yes, your majesty. Order Long Qianlin to resist the army of the demon race led by Tang Xiaoxi. The conferring ceremony will be held at noon tomorrow." At noon the next day, the main hall of Zetian Palace was filled with people. The officials of Iha nation had gathered. For many of them, today was an important day because it was the day of rewards. Ignoring the demon race army that was attacking outside the city, Qin Yi needed to give some encouragement to the soldiers and generals who had been fighting for months. The conferring ceremony begins. An attendant shouted, "Chief Commander, please announce the names of the 7 great commanders of Iha nation." Qin Yi held the hilt of the Desolation Sword in one hand and a scroll in the other. He walked to the front of the throne and said in a clear voice, "The world now belongs to our Iha nation. The generals have worked hard. Today, Qin Yi has received the mandate of heaven to confer the title of the 7 great commanders. Everyone, please remember, treat people with benevolence and all living things are equal. The 100 Mountains Alliance, the Life and Death Pact." Qin Yi paused for a moment before continuing. Jiao fought his way from Lingnan to Lingbei and made countless contributions, so he was specially conferred the title of Grand Marshal. Qin Huan fought his way through Lingdong Province and Tongtian Province, so he was conferred the title of Vice Marshal. Lu Zhao won every battle he fought, so he was conferred the title of Third Marshal. Man Fong, the son of Earl Xiang, Man Ning, was valiant and invincible, so he was conferred the title of Fourth Marshal. Li Qianxuan, the hero of Lingnan, was conferred the title of 5th Marshal. Ding Shi, the descendant of a famous general of Xiang City, was conferred the title of 6th Marshal. Immediately, the officials congratulated each other. These 7 marshals would undoubtedly be the future leaders of the entire Iha nation. Naturally, they would be recommended and fawned upon by everyone. Lu Zhao smiled coldly and said, "I thought I could get a 2nd marshal. I didn't expect to only get a 3rd marshal." Ji Yao couldn't help but laugh. Young Prince Qin Huan is the son of the commander. But is General Lu Zhao unhappy about this? I wouldn't dare. Lu Zhao looked at Long Qianlin, who was behind him, and smiled. General Long Qianlin, on the other hand, has been invading the imperial capital like a hot knife through butter. You've even defeated Chu Huaying, Feng Jixing, Lin Muyu, and other famous generals of the empire. I originally thought that General Long would be a great marshal, but I didn't expect you to be ranked last. Hee. Long Qianlin placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and said calmly, "General Lu Zhao, you're flattering me. I, Long Qianlin, am just trying to overthrow the empire for the sake of the people. I don't seek fame. It's already my great honor to be ranked as one of the 7 marshals. I heard that General Lu Zhao commanded 200,000 troops but couldn't do anything to a group of demons. I wonder if that's true." Lu Zhao said angrily, "Long Qianlin, watch your words." Long Qianlin said proudly, "How did I not watch my words?" Ji Yao tried to smooth things over and said with a smile, "Both of you are famous generals of the Iha nation. Don't lose your bearing. General Long, the Iha nation's army is about to retreat to Five Valley City. The heavy responsibility of defending Lanyan City will fall on your shoulders." "Oh right, His Majesty. Oh no, the commander can only give you 50,000 troops. I wonder if you can stop Tang Xiaoxi's 100,000 troops." "Why not?" Long Qianlin said calmly, 50,000 troops is enough." Ji Yao laughed and looked at Ding Shi. "It's already the 6th day. If General Ding Shi still can't take down Mount Dragon Rocky and capture Qin Yin, the daughter of a tyrant, I'm afraid we, the 7 marshals, won't have the face to face the people anymore." Ding Shi's gaze was indifferent. He cupped his fists and said, "I'm incompetent. I still can't take down Mount Dragon Rocky. Please forgive me, Marshal." Ji Yao laughed coldly and said, "What's there to talk about forgiveness? You and I are both generals who have contributed to the Iha nation. However, General Ding Shi really should speed up. I heard that Yunzhong province has been mobilizing troops frequently recently. That old fox Su Muyun should be making a move soon." Yes. In the afternoon, the Iha nation's army began to retreat from Lanyan City in a mighty manner. At the same time, they plundered all the wealth in Lanyan City. The caravans that transported goods stretched for hundreds of miles as they made their way to Five Valley City in an endless stream. At the same time, the road was filled with patrols carrying steel sabers and killing the people. The haze of death still hung over Lanyan City. The 7th Marshal, Long Qianlin, commanded 50,000 troops and horses and faced off against Tang Xiaoxi's army outside Lanyan City. The next day, news came from afar that 200,000 troops from Yunzhong province had come out and intercepted the Iha nation's army on the road between Lanyan City and Five Valley City. Su Muyun's daughter, Su Yu, personally led the troops and defeated the Iha nation's army. In the crushing defeat, the Iha nation lost nearly 50,000 troops and fled to Five Valley City. The tens of thousands of troops that besieged Mount Dragon Rocky also retreated from the dense forest to Five Valley City under Ding Shi's command. The letter flew out of his palm. Long Qianlin leaned against the broken bricks of the broken wall and suddenly laughed. "Ha, ha." Captain Si was dumbfounded and said, "General, why are you laughing when the Iha nation has suffered such a crushing defeat?" "Retribution, retribution." Long Qianlin held onto the ice-cold bricks and said with a sneer, "The Iha nation ignored my obstruction and launched a massacre at Lanyan City. This is retribution. Ha! Su Muyun, that old fox, is finally willing to send troops. I'm afraid this world is no longer the Iha nation's world." At this moment, a scout galloped over from afar. He cupped his fists and said, "General Long, I've just received news that the Seven Seas Pass has been opened. Tang Lan has led 100,000 troops out of the Seven Seas Pass and is heading straight for Lanyan City." Long Qianlin's eyes turned cold and he said, "Tang Lan, that old fox, finally can't stand it anymore? Heh, it's really not easy for that old fox to endure until now." Captaincy said, "General Long, Seven Seas Pass and Sunset Rain City have sent their troops together. We are destined to lose Lanyan City." Long Qianlin nodded and said, "Do you know why I want the remaining 50,000 cavalrymen of the Iha nation? It's not to kill the Naga army, but to run faster." Captaincy was stunned. "General Long, you already knew that the Iha nation would lose 3 days ago? Qin Jin is dead, and the empire is leaderless. It's time for Tang Lan and Su Myun to come out of their nests and share this delicious cake, isn't it?" "Yes, General is wise. What should we do now?" "Order everyone to bring their rations after nightfall and leave the city through the east gate. Don't disturb any citizens. Also, no one is to massacre the city again, or else they will be killed without mercy." "Yes, where are we going?" "Sword Garret, back to Lingnan. We don't want Five Valleys City anymore." Captaincy's face turned green. "We can't defend Five Valleys City any longer." Long Qianlin said indifferently, "Instead of going to Five Valleys City to throw our lives away, why don't we go to Sword Garret and clear the obstacles on the way back to Lingnan?" That night, in the silence of the night, 50,000 cavalrymen of the Iha nation left Lanyan City, leaving a capital riddled with holes for Tang Xiaoxi outside the city. In the early morning, dew moistened the land of Lanyan City and the wounds of the city. Tang Xiaoxi slowly spurred her warhorse into the capital. Looking at the city gate that had been reduced to powder, tears flowed from her eyes. "Mu, you're not dead. Tell Xiaoxi that you're not dead, right?" Tang Zhen's eyes reddened as he said, "Princess, General Lin Mu, he is indeed worthy of being called a famous general, but he has really left me." "No, he won't," Tang Xiaoxi murmured. Chapter 311. In the Zetian Palace, almost all the treasures in the palace had been plundered. The Iha kingdom was like a group of bandits as they ransacked this world-famous palace. When Tang Xiaoxi led the army into the Zetian Palace, it was already empty and no longer as prosperous as it used to be. Fortunately, Long Qianlin could be considered a benevolent general and had burned down the Zetian Palace. He didn't even set fire to Lanyan City before he left. Otherwise, this famous city that had existed for thousands of years would have been burned to the ground. Ling Huyen led the 3 Fox tribe generals and followed closely beside Tang Xiaoxi. They looked at the black mass of corpses in front of the Zetian Palace. Their eyes were filled with reluctance, but they remained silent. One of the Fox tribe generals curled his lips and said, "The humans say that we demon tribe are cruel and ruthless. Now it seems that the humans are not much better. They might even be worse than us." The Naga leader at the side stuck out his tongue and hissed something. The captaincy of the Seven Seas City placed their hands on the hilts of their swords and lined up on another long red carpet in the Zetian Palace. They looked respectfully at Tang Xiaoxi and waited for her next order. "Duke Lan's army will arrive at Lanyan City in 3 days. Tang Zhen said respectfully, "Princess, shouldn't we be prepared? After all, you led the army to recapture Lanyan City on your own. Although it is a great achievement, you didn't get Duke Lan's approval and mobilized the 50,000 soldiers of the Seven Seas City. Moreover, we lost more than 10,000 people." Tang Xiaoxi smiled slightly. "It's all right. I will bear all the responsibility alone. Tang Zhen, have you calculated how many people the Iha kingdom killed in Lanyan City?" Tang Zhen's expression was solemn as he said, "I don't have detailed statistics for now. However, looking at the situation, at least 1 million civilians in Lanyan City were slaughtered. The corpses piled up like mountains outside the city is enough to prove this. In addition, the massacre caused countless civilians to flee Lanyan City. Lanyan City has lost a lot of its population. In addition, the surrounding villages and towns have been massacred many times. I'm afraid that Lanyan City, which is known as the #1 city in the world, has far less than 5 million people left. It would be fortunate if half of its population could be preserved. Got it. Tang Xiaoxi sat gently on the throne and said, "It's easy to cause a plague when the corpses decompose, so immediately organize people to bury and burn the corpses of the victims. In addition, send out an imperial notice to recall the refugees. Tangjin, go to Lanyan City and summon all the officials of the Ministry of Revenue who are still alive, as well as all the officials of the counties and counties. Have them organize people to bury the corpses and repair the walls and houses. We must restore order and livelihood in Lanyan City as soon as possible. I can't let Xiao Yin return to see a lifeless Lanyan City. Everything must be running again." "Yes, I understand." Tangjin cupped his fists and said, "But princess, the monster race's army has already entered the city, but the serpent men, lizard men, and bear men aren't humans after all. Once Duke Lan's army of 100,000 arrives, I'm worried that it will cause a misunderstanding. So, in my opinion, the monster race's army has already helped the humans recover the imperial capital and can be sent back." Tang Xiaoxi gently nodded. Linghu Yen bowed and said, "Your Highness, I'm here. The monster race's army has made a great contribution this time, but I really have nothing to reward you with. In order to avoid another war between the humans and the monster race, immediately take my order and go to the demon-subduing pass. Return to the Forest of Infinity. I will visit you again." "Yes, Your Highness." Linghu Yen turned around and said loudly to the group of monster race generals, "Monster warriors, did you hear what Your Highness said? You are the pride of the Forest of Infinity. Now go home." "Yes, Your Highness." The group of monster race generals bowed in unison, turned around, and left. Tangjin blinked and said, "I will escort the monster race out of Lanyan City." Tang Xiaoxi smiled. "Yes, have a better attitude." "Yes, Your Highness." At the edge of the dragon-seeking forest in the midst of spring, birds were singing and flowers were fragrant. In the sound of horse hooves, Su Mun, dressed in a black duke's robe, was surrounded by people with his hand on the hilt of his sword. Su Er rode the horse side by side, gazing into the distance, and said, "Father, we are about to arrive at Dragon Rocky Mountain. According to the report from Yushu, the Longdan army camp has been cut off from rations and water. The Iha country has besieged them for half a month, and the number of people in the Longdan army camp has been reduced from more than 1,000 to more than 400. Su Muyun nodded. After the chaos in the Iha country, the major mercenary groups in the imperial capital did not obey the emperor's orders. A mere Longdan army camp can actually burst out with such great power. They really cannot be underestimated. Su Er said, "Father, the founder of the Longdan army camp is the emperor's foster son, Lin Muyu." "I know." Su Muyun pulled the reins and said, "Yu is a genius, but unfortunately, he died in the hands of Luo Lan. Sigh. It is really the Empire's misfortune. I wonder how Xiao Yin is doing on Dragon Rocky Mountain. What you need to worry about is the situation in Lanyan City." "Yes." At this moment, a white messenger bird descended from the sky and landed on Su Er's shoulder. She took the bamboo tube, took out the letter and glanced at it. A trace of surprise flashed in her eyes, and she said, "Father, Long Qianlin's 50,000 heavy cavalry has retreated from Lanyan City. Now, Lanyan City has been attacked by Tang Xiaoxi's troops." "Tang Xiaoxi?" Su Muyun sighed and said, "Lanyan City has been massacred, and all the feudal vassals have either submitted to the Iha kingdom or gone into hiding. No one would have thought that Tang Xiaoxi would lead the monster race army to declare war on the Iha kingdom. What a loyal and affectionate princess of Seven Seas City. However, with Tang Xiaoxi controlling Lanyan City, I'm afraid it will be very disadvantageous for us." Su Er was stunned. "As long as we receive Xiao Yin, we can help Xiao Yin ascend the throne. Do you think Tang Xiaoxi will refuse to let us enter the city? That's enough. Let's hurry up and get Xiao Yin." "Yes." When the Muyu City army arrived at the foot of Dragon Rocky Mountain, the people of Dragon Rocky Mountain were shocked. However, when they saw the Muyu city army waving the empire's purple Yinhua flag, Luo Yu was the first to jump off the city wall and ordered, "Scouts, go and see where they are from. Don't fall into the Iha kingdom's trap." A scout galloped away, holding a purple Yinhua flag in his hand, and directly came to the front of the Muyu city army. He said loudly, "Our Lord Luo Yu wants me to ask, where are you from?" In the crowd, Su Muyun slowly rode out, cupped his fists, and said respectfully, "The Cloud Province's Grand Duke, Su Muyun, is here to receive you. Please tell Her Highness Yin that grandfather is here." The scout was stunned, and his eyes widened, and he said, It's really the Muyu city army?" Su'er said, "How could it be wrong? I am Her Highness Yin's aunt, the commander of the Zither Dragon Army, Suyu. Just tell Her Highness the truth." The scout turned and left, and Qin Yin, Chu Yao, Qin Yen, and the others also came after hearing the news. Qin Yin's face was full of excitement. "Is grandfather really here?" "Yes, Your Highness." Luo Yu cupped her fists and said, "It's true." Qin Yin excitedly rode away, and she said with a smile, "Everyone, follow me to welcome grandfather." The group went down the mountain, and when they arrived at the foot of the mountain, they saw Su Muyun and Su Yu from afar. Qin Yin's eyes instantly turned red, and tears swirled in her eyes. She leaped into Su Muyun's arms, and she cried loudly, "Grandfather, why are you only here now?" Su Muyun's body trembled, and he hugged the empire's princess in his arms. He gently stroked her hair, and he said, "Xiao Yin, don't cry, it's all my fault. It's all my fault that I couldn't send my troops in time. Father is dead, Qin Lei, and Chu Huayin are all dead." Qin Yin slowly let go of Su Muyun, and she said, "Grandfather, you are more well-informed than me. Tell me, how is Big Brother Yu, and where is he now?" Su Muyun's expression darkened, and he didn't speak. At the side, Su Yu flipped off the horse, and she gently stroked Qin Yin's shoulder, and said faintly, "Xiao Yin Lin Muyu he was intercepted by Luo Lan in Lanyan City, and he died for his country, what?" Qin Yin stood there in a daze, and tears flowed out of her eyes. The golden god-binding chains around her started to spin uncontrollably, and it caused Su Yu and Su Muyun to retreat. In the next moment, Qin Yin suddenly fell to her knees, and she seemed to have lost her soul, and she muttered to herself, "No, no, no." Su Yu's heart ached, and she said, "Xiao, be strong, the empire needs you." Behind her, Luo Yu, Fengxi, Qin Yen, Wei Chou, and the rest all knelt in the direction of Lanyan City. Wei Chou's eyes were blood red, and he shouted at the top of his lungs, "Commander, if you die just like that, what will happen to us? What will happen to the Longdan army camp in the future? Commander, why did someone like you die? Tell me, Wei Chou, why did someone like you die?" Chu Yao stood there in a daze, and tears flowed down her face silently. The blow she suffered was probably no less than Qin Yin's. With Chu Huayin's death, Lin Muyu was her only relative. Now that she received the news of Lin Muyu's death, it was like a bolt from the blue. Su Muyun looked at Qin Yin, and his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. He held her arm and said, "Xiao Yin, be strong. We are going home soon, and rebuilding Lanyan City and recovering the empire is your mission." Qin Yin murmured, "Where is Big Brother Yu's corpse?" "I don't know. Maybe it has been transported away by the Iha nation." "How could they do this?" Tears rolled down Qin Yin's beautiful eyes, and she said, "Why did the Iha nation do this? Didn't they say that all lives are equal?" Su Muyun clenched his fists and said, "Xiao Yin, pull yourself together. Only you can summon the brave warriors of the empire to take revenge." Qin Yin nodded and said, "Grandfather, let's go home. Zetian Palace Hall needs us." Su Muyun said loudly, "Send Her Highness to the carriage. Quick, go to Lanyan City at full speed." "No, I won't take the carriage." Qin Yin shook her head and flipped onto the horse. She said calmly, "From today onwards, I will never take the carriage again." Su Muyun. Chapter 312. Overgrown weeds grew between the cracks of the bricks on the city wall, and they swayed repeatedly when the spring breeze blew. Tang Jin pressed his hand on the hilt of his sword and stood on the city wall like a stone statue, supervising the commoners who were repairing the city wall in the distance. The broken wall had already been rebuilt to half its height, and smoke curled up from the chimneys in the city. The soldiers of the spiritual medicine department were preparing the commoners' lunch. Suddenly, a soldier pointed into the distance and said, "Commander, look! There are people coming from the direction of Seven Seas City." Tang Jin was slightly stunned, and he looked into the distance. Sure enough, smoke and dust billowed in the distance. Not only were there people coming, but there were many of them. The 100,000-strong army of Seven Seas City was finally about to arrive at Lanyan City. However, they only arrived nearly 20 days after Lanyan City was massacred. "Go get Princess Shi." Not long after, Tang Xiaoxi walked up the city wall in a white embroidered robe, and a few Seven Seas City captaincy followed behind her. She slowly came to Tang Jin's side and said, "Send a cavalryman out of the city to ask where they came from. Close the city gates, and don't trust anyone easily." "Yes, Prince." Tang Jin did as he was told, and the cavalryman galloped over quickly. He cupped his fists at Tang Xiaoxi, who was on the city wall, and said, "Princess Shi, Commander Tang Jin, it's young Master Tang Lu and young Lady Tang Wei from Seven Seas City. At the back, young Master Tang Tian is escorting Duke Lan over. The 100,000-strong army of Seven Seas City is about to arrive at Lanyan City. Young Master Tang Lu asked me to inform Princess Shi and order her to open the city gates and go out to welcome Duke Lan." "Tang Lu and Tang Wei?" Tang Xiaoxi pursed her red lips, and her eyes flickered with uncertainty. She said, "Tang Jin, pass down the order to close all the city gates of Lanyan City and send a large number of soldiers to guard it. Prohibit any soldiers of the Empire or volunteers from entering Lanyan City." Princess?" Tang Jin was shocked and said, "This isn't very good, right? After all, we are all soldiers of Seven Seas City, and Duke Lan is personally leading the army of Seven Seas City to reinforce Lanyan City. It's fine if you don't come out of the city to welcome us, but why do you have to close the city gates?" Tang Xiaoxi said faintly, "There is only one master of Lanyan City, and her name is Qin Yin. Unless Qin Yin comes to Lanyan City in person, I won't hand Zetian Palace over to anyone. Tang Jin, don't forget that we took back Lanyan City from Iha Nation at the cost of the lives of more than 10,000 soldiers. Now, I'm the master of Lanyan City." "Yes, I understand." Tang Jin wanted to say something but hesitated. After a few seconds, he cupped his fists and said, "I'm willing to follow the Countess until death." "That's good. Go and pass the order." "Yes." The city gates of Lanyan City were closed, and Tang Xiaoxi stood on the city walls with her sleeves fluttering in the wind. She looked at the dense crowd of people of Seven Seas City gathering in the distance. An hour later, nearly 30,000 soldiers of Seven Seas City formed a formation outside the city. Two generals riding white horses galloped over. They were Tang Lu and Tang Wei. This made Tang Xiaoxi feel a little uneasy. Tang Lan had 3 sons. The eldest was Tang Xiaoxi's father, who had passed away, and the second was Tang Jin. Tang Jin had 3 children. The eldest was Tang Bin, who had been killed by Lin Muyu in the dragon-seeking forest. The second was Tang Lu, and his daughter, Tang Wei, were the 2 below the city. Tang Lu, who was dressed in silver armor, had already recognized Tang Xiaoxi. He spurred his horse forward and said, "Xiao Shi, quickly open the city gates. Grandfather's caravan is about to arrive. What are you waiting for?" Tang Xiaoxi approached the city walls and said with a smile, "I'll have to trouble second brother and little sister to go back and tell grandfather that Lanyan City has just suffered from a massacre. The city is not yet stable, so it's not suitable to station an army. So, grandfather, please station Seven Seas City outside the city." "Xiao Shi, what do you mean?" Tang Lu suddenly frowned and asked. "Boring." Tang Xiaoxi smiled. "Second brother, look at the 2 sides outside the city walls." "What is that?" Tang Lu's gaze swept over and said indifferently, "So what if there are corpses piled up like a mountain?" Tang Xiaoxi giggled. Second brother, you also know that they are corpses? Then do you know why these people have become corpses? That's right, it's because the army of Seven Seas City hasn't come out yet. If the 200,000 people of Seven Seas City had come out in full force like now, these people wouldn't have died. Chu Huaying wouldn't have died, Qin Lei wouldn't have died, and Mu wouldn't have died either. What nonsense are you talking about? Tang Lu's gaze was cold as he said, the Seven Seas City is the foundation of our Tang clan, and the might of the righteous Harmony Nation is great. Even if we go all out, it would only be like striking a rock with an egg. Little Shi, quickly open the city gates, otherwise, what are you going to do? Tang Xiaoxi's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of coldness. Otherwise, I'll flatten this broken city. Tang Lu raised his spear high and shouted, soldiers on the city walls, you are all soldiers of my Tang clan. Have you forgotten the iron rules of the Tang sect? Immediately open the city walls and welcome Duke Lan's army into the city. However, the soldiers on the city walls didn't move at all. In fact, none of them even looked at Tang Lu. Tang Xiaoxi couldn't help but laugh. Second brother, don't waste your efforts. They are soldiers of the Tang clan, but before that, they are soldiers of the empire. Not all of them are rebellious and want to ascend to the throne. Go back and tell grandfather that unless Shao Yin returns to Lanyan City, I won't open the city gates to let any soldiers in. If you want to enter the city, then come and attack. Archers, get ready. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A row of archers drew their bows in unison and aimed at Tang Lu, Tang Wei, and the rest below the city walls. Tang Lu had been spoiled and domineering since he was young. He had never suffered such humiliation before. His expression was cold as he said, good, you guys did well. As a member of my Tang clan, you actually dared to aim your arrows at me. Tangjin, I'll remember you. Tangjin cupped his fists on the city walls and said with a smile, I'm sorry, second young master. This general listens to the iron orders of the Tang clan and is currently only loyal to Princess Shi. Moreover, I, Tangjin, am a soldier of the empire. My loyalty to the empire will never waver. But Tang Lu raised his spear and said, men, prepare the catapults. Attack the city for me. Tang Wei hurriedly pulled Tang Lu's arm and said, brother, don't mess around. Go back and tell grandfather about the situation here. If we really start a war with Shaoxi, I'm afraid it'll get out of hand. Tang Lu gritted his teeth and spurred his horse to turn around and leave, vanishing like a wisp of smoke. Amidst the sound of horse hooves, Tang Lu and Tang Wei returned to the central army camp with pale faces. They bowed to Tang Lan from afar and said, grandfather, Lanyan City isn't willing to open the city gates to welcome the 7 armies. What's going on? Tang Lan's face was pale, and he shivered in the night wind. He wrapped his robe in armor and said, haven't Shaoxi and Tangjin already taken control of Lanyan City? That girl and Tangjin have already committed treason. Tang Lu said coldly, moreover, Shaoxi even ordered people to shoot at me with bows and arrows to force us to leave the city walls. How infuriating! Treason? Tang Lan smiled and said, Xiaoxi secretly mobilized the army of the Tang Town barracks and summoned the guards of the Demon Clan to take over the large Lanyan city from the Iha country. If this is considered treason, then we are all traitors of the country. Grandfather, Tang Lu couldn't understand Tang Lan's thoughts and said, grandfather, now it's Shaoxi, this rebellious descendant of the Tang clan, who is obstructing us from entering Lanyan city. Tang Lan sighed and said, what did Shaoxi say? Tang Wei blinked and said, big sister Shaoxi said that unless Her Highness Qin Yin personally comes, otherwise, she won't open the gates of Lanyan city. This Lanyan city can only belong to Qin Yin and no one else. So, she asked grandfather to station the army of the Seven Seas city outside the city, and once Her Highness Yin returns to the city, she'll naturally accept the army of the Seven Seas city. Is that so? Tang Lan's brows knit together tightly, and he waved his hand and said, Tang Lu, Tang Wei, both of you go make arrangements to set up camp outside the city. Since Xiao won't come to welcome this old man into the city, then we'll wait outside the city. Tang Lu and Tang Wei spurred their horses and left. Tang Lan sighed and remained silent. At the side, a general whose face was shrouded in a cloak smiled and said, "What a joke. The granddaughter has occupied the city, but she won't let her grandfather enter. This is truly a strange story." However, it seems that Duke Lan doesn't vent his anger on Princess Tang Xiaoxi. Why is that? Tang Lan turned around and glanced at him, saying with a faint smile, "Can't General Xiang see? All the sons of the Tang family are mediocre, only Xiaoxi is an exception. Although she's a woman, she dares to do what she wants." When the Iha country's army of nearly 500,000 surrounded Lanyan City, who in the world dares to oppose them? Only I, this rebellious granddaughter, had the courage to stand up and contend with Ji Yao, Long Qianlin, Ding Shi, and the other famous generals without being defeated. The mysterious general smiled and said, "This is the truth. In the entire Tang sect, only Tang Xiaoxi is the most courageous and resourceful." So, Tang Lan sighed and said with a smile, "No matter how rebellious Xiaoxi is, I can't be angry with her. She is my greatest pride and the only hope of our Tang sect." "Then, what do you plan to do now, Duke Lan? Are you just going to guard outside Lanyan City?" "No." Tang Lan's eyes flashed and he said, "The Iha country has seized more than half of the empire's territory, but now they are at the end of their rope. They can only retreat again and again. The army of Muyu City in Yunzhong province has also come out. We can't wait, and we don't have time to wait. We must seize more land before Qin Yin steps into Lanyan City." "Duke Lan is wise. What do you need me to do?" "I'll give you a group of men. You must attack the Earth Star province, which is directly south of Lanyan City. You must seize Cold Star City and make it our territory. Tell me, how many men do you need?" 2,000 cavalrymen are enough." Xiang Yu smiled confidently. 2,000? Tang Lan also smiled. "You're indeed the descendant of the god of war, Xiang Wenin. This arrogance is indeed not something an ordinary person can have. I'll give you 3,000 cavalrymen. You must seize the entire Cold Star province within 3 days. Can you do it?" "Yes, General Xiang." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.